Chapter 851, Land Spirits Master, Second Blessed Land. After obtaining the severed arm, Fang Yuan carefully kept it in his immortal aperture. Soon after, he cleaned up the area and removed all his traces. Returning to Hu immortal blessed land, he did not rest. He started working on the severed arm, spending 4 days and 3 nights to turn it into Song Zi Xing's head. Next, he used fixed immortal travel and went to Earth Abyss. Star form land spirit, I brought Song Zi Xing's head. In the eerie and dark underground world, he shouted. A speck of starlight first appeared, before light burst out like water from a fountain. A breath of time later, a huge squarish door made of starlight appeared. The half-transparent door was floating in the air. At the top, there were 4 words written on the plaque, Star Form Blessed Land. Fang Yuan squinted as he looked at it. Ordinary blessed lands and grotto heavens had entrances. Because the entrance represented interaction, and with interaction, they could take in heaven and earth chi to strengthen the small world. Thus, infallible blessed land was very unique, because it did not have entrances. It was a very strange exception. As Fang Yuan waited, a small slit opened in the starlight door. It's you. You really brought Song Zi Xing's head. A voice came from behind the slit. Star form land spirit did not appear. He was quite wary. Fang Yuan chuckled as he tossed the head over. Actions speak louder than words. The slit opened a bit more. A suction force moved the head over to it. It really is Song Zi Xing's head. A joyful and surprised voice came from behind the door. Boom! The door opened completely. Starlight opened up a path for Fang Yuan, as Star Form Land Spirit stood at the door, saying to Fang Yuan with cheerful submission, Star Form Land Spirit greets Master. Fang Yuan nodded, his expression was calm. He took huge steps and walked onto the starlight path, entering into Star Form Blessed Land. The moment he stepped in, starlight overwhelmed Fang Yuan's vision. But in the blink of an eye, the starlight faded, and Star Form Blessed Land's unique terrain appeared before him. The whole of Star Form Blessed Land resembled a giant bowl. Like a bowl, the edges were interconnected mountain ranges. They formed a tight circle that resembled city walls. And within the bowl, they were slanted slopes that converged towards the center. Darkness enshrouded this world. Fang Yuan raised his head and looked at the sky. There was nearly complete darkness. Only a few starlight specks were shining weakly in the sky. Like how Hu immortal blessed land only had days without nights, Star Form Blessed Land only had nights without days. Normally, blessed lands would not have changes between day and night. Only after becoming a grotto heaven or becoming close to a grotto heaven would they start having such transformations between night and day. This was not the first time Fang Yuan was here. In fact, he was the one who placed down this blessed land. Last time, the stars were shining in the sky. It was very bright and dazzling. The ground was very bright due to all of the starlight. But now, it was quite dim. It showed that Star Form Land Spirit was not having an easy time managing the place. This was to be expected. Without a Gu immortal, the blessed land could not produce immortal essence. The land spirit and the blessed land were interlinked. It had to protect itself and manage the blessed land. But how could land spirits have the strength and wisdom of Gu immortals? Thus, most land spirits would find a master to help themselves. Survival was the most basic instinct in all living beings. The only difference was the difficulty in getting the land spirit to acknowledge a new master. Fang Yuan's gaze swept across the area, before it landed on Star Form Land Spirit. Bring me around to inspect the blessed land. Fang Yuan ordered. Star Form Land Spirit looked like a little boy. He was floating in the air. He was wearing pinkish-blue clothes wrapped around his chest and stomach. His small arms and legs were tender white like lotus roots, looking delicate like jade. he appeared very cute. After acknowledging Fang Yuan, Star Form Land Spirit looked towards Fang Yuan with a clear gaze filled with admiration and warmth. Hearing Fang Yuan's words, Star Form Land Spirit nodded, "Master, follow me." This attitude was completely the opposite of previously. A lump of starlight gathered on Fang Yuan, as his body flew up rapidly. This speed was extremely fast, even Song Zixing's blood rainbow flash could not match it. Fang Yuan felt his vision blurring, all he saw was starlight around him, he could only catch occasional fuzzy images from the quickly moving scenery. The starlight stopped moving, and the scene in his vision had already changed. "Master, you are at the southeast side of the blessed land now. This is the Arrow Bamboo Forest. The biggest plantation area in the entire blessed land." Star Form Land Spirit introduced. Fang Yuan looked over, only to see that this Arrow Bamboo Forest was huge, it extended beyond Fang Yuan's field of vision. The arrow bamboos were straight, they resembled green spear bamboo from Qing Mao Mountain, but they were not jade in color. Instead, the bamboo shoots were black and did not have any leaves growing on them, only branches. At each segment of the arrow bamboo, there would be around 3 branches growing on it. These branches were sharp and long, resembling arrows. Below the arrow bamboo forest were large numbers of star cave rocks, countless dark fragrance mushrooms and a field of white shadow grass. Fang Yuan nodded his head internally, the arrangement of this habitat could not be done any better. "If I am not wrong, this should be the production area of Daoist Gu?" Fang Yuan asked. "Master is correct." Star Form Land Spirit answered immediately. Daoist Gu was a rank 1 mortal Gu, it was transformed from ordinary insects. This was different from the production of Starlight Firefly Gu. Starlight Firefly Gu were a part of the Starlight Firefly group, produced after they transformed and mutated. Daoist Gu could be produced from any type of insect which entered deep sleep inside a star cave rock that was filled with holes on the surface. After a total of 49 days, a portion of the slumbering insects would undergo a change and become Daoist Gu. The food of Daoist Gu was the bamboo juice of the arrow bamboo forest. The arrow bamboo forest was hot and humid, the bamboos themselves would produce bamboo juice that dripped out. In the past, the bamboo juices produced would form into a thick blue fog, it was a top-quality place to raise Daoist Gu. Unfortunately, I have not obtained any good watering liquids, thus it became like this. Star Form Land Spirit said with a longing tone. "It seems I have to buy moon well water in batches." Fang Yuan muttered, he was very knowledgeable, he knew what water the arrow bamboo forest needed. "Master is knowledgeable." Star Form Land Spirit added, his expression becoming excited. Even though Star Lord Wanxiang left behind quite a bit of immortal essence, there were few immortal essence stones. And because Star Form Land Spirit was worrying over his finances, he could not buy goods from Treasure Yellow Heaven casually. Compared to watering the arrow bamboo forest, there were other areas which needed the financial support more urgently. Afterwards, under the guidance of the Land Spirit, Fang Yuan went to the north area of the Blessed Land, inspecting the meteorite pits. This was the place to raise stellar fire Gu and produce falling meteor Gu. Next, he went to the center of the Blessed Land. This was a lake with ripples and reflecting light, it was huge and was called Broken Star Lake. This was also the place to rear Gu worms, it produced Star River Gu. Next, he went to several grassy fields, they were all full of star fragment grass, a vast number of them. They were planted on black soil, the blades of grass were plump and shiny, they were much higher in quality compared to the ones that were planted in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Arrow Bamboo Forest, Meteorite Pit, Broken Star Lake, Star Fragment Grass Field. Fang Yuan floated in the air, looking at the lake, he showed a satisfied expression. The 4 areas mentioned were Star Lord Wan Xiang's 4 main sources of revenue. Star Lord Wan Xiang was quite decent in his development. He mainly sold Star Dart Gu, Stellar Fire Gu, Falling Meteor Gu, Star River Gu, and Starlight Firefly Gu. While Fong Yuan was still searching desperately for 4 sources of revenue, he already had them. At the moment, Fong Yuan only had Guts Gu and Regretful Spider trades. The other 2, Eerie Fire Dragon Pythons and Dragonfish, were still not sold in the market yet. Star Lord Wan Xiang had rank 6 cultivation level with 1 heavenly tribulation passed. He was also a lone cultivator, but he was higher in cultivation level than Hu Immortal. According to his status and foundation, it would normally be impossible for him to develop his blessed land to this extent. But he had his fortuitous encounter. That was Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. The owner of Starry Sky Grotto Heaven, 7-star child, became an immortal zombie in order to prolong his life. While exploring star constellation Immortal Venerable's dream realm, he fell into deep slumber. Star Lord Wan Xiang had by chance discovered that Starry Sky Grotto Heaven connected to a spatial crack in the outside world of Central Continent. Every year, at a certain time, this crack would open. Thus, Star Lord Wan Xiang would go in every year to scavenge for resources to strengthen himself. Even though he had limited time on each occasion, he entered many times. Star Lord Wan Xiang thus had decent development. His immortal aperture was smoothly growing in value with each passing day. He surpassed most lone cultivator Gu immortals. Even Shirley praised his blessed land inwardly when he saw it. This Star Lord Wan Xiang's foundation was already on par with typical rank 6 Gu immortals in the 10 great ancient sects. But it was a pity that Star Lord Wan Xiang was heavily injured by Song Zixing, and because his tribulation was impending, he had to take a risk. He invited immortal Monkey King Shirley to explore Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. In the end, at the 8th star hall, he fell into star constellation Immortal Venerable's dream realm. His soul was destroyed and only his body was left. Fong Yuan took the body and placed the blessed land in Earth Abyss. This led to the development of future events, like Star Form Land Spirit's requirement for becoming the new owner. With these 4 sources of revenue, my financial power will double. I will be swimming in profits. I will really be drowning in immortal essence stones. Fong Yuan was overjoyed. Star Lord Wan Xiang had operated his blessed land for a long time. He had already slotted himself into the market and had his own share of the economy in Treasure Yellow Heaven. Fong Yuan inherited his blessed land. He had also gotten over the difficult initial stage of entering the market. He took over Star Lord Wan Xiang's businesses directly. It saved him lots of trouble. Ordinary resources like Star Dart Gu and Stellar Fire Gu were usually sold in bulk quantities. They were very competitive in the market. It was not easy to carve out a share for oneself in the market. They would be collaborated against, facing price wars, or some Gu immortals might even threaten to kill them. As the saying goes, ruining a person's wealth is akin to killing their parents. The Gu immortal world was very cruel. If you want to do business, you need to show your strength. Without strength, no matter how flourishing your business was, you would get killed and plundered. Thus, Fong Yuan was always very careful with the dragonfish and eerie fire dragon pythons that he had. He wanted to make use of Shao Clan's transaction token to enter Western Desert's market. That could avoid much trouble, and allow him to earn more profits. Of course, for monopoly businesses like Guts Gu, you could sell them as you wish. Others could not even compete in this, they could only watch and envy. Ch. Ek out L. T. St. V. L. On NOV. L/bin. C. M. After inspecting the blessed land, Fong Yuan was very pleased, but there was still something that he was highly anticipating. Land Spirit, bring me to see those immortal Gu in the blessed land. At the next moment, he instructed the Land Spirit. Chapter 852, 3 Immortal Gu, all are useful. The whole of star form blessed land was like a giant bowl, and its center was also the location which was at the bottom of the terrain. There was a lake here that spanned as far as the eye could see, its name was Broken Star Lake. And the place where Star Lord Wanxiang normally cultivated was also set at the bottom of Broken Star Lake. Reaching the bottom of the lake, Fang Yuan discovered a crystal palace. It was not large, and only had one main hall along with two normal halls. Star Lord Wanxiang's immortal Gu were kept in the main hall. Under the guidance of Star Form Land Spirit, Fang Yuan smoothly entered the main hall. The moment he entered the main hall, he saw an immortal Gu flying around. This immortal Gu resembled a centipede. It was thin and long, like an arm, and black like iron. It was flying around in a zigzag fashion inside the main hall, the short horizontal segments on its body lit up like blue fireflies every now and then. This is a rank 6 immortal Gu, star mark. It can temporarily add 600 star path Dao marks onto Master's body. Star Form Land Spirit aptly introduced. 600 Dao marks. Fang Yuan was startled. Even the strength path Dao marks on his body numbered no more than 200. This was the case after he had been using Eat Strength Immortal Gu recently to add over 40. However, this star mark immortal Gu could actually cause an increase of 600 star Dao marks at once. It could be said to be an outstanding ability. 200 Dao marks can increase power by 20%. 600 would mean a 60% increase. Unfortunately, they are star path Dao marks, and I am not a star path Gu immortal. There was no doubt this star mark immortal Gu was a high-quality support type immortal Gu. Fang Yuan was a strength path Gu immortal and his body carried strength path Dao marks, but once he activated star mark immortal Gu, his body would be temporarily covered in a layer of star path Dao marks, letting him disguise himself as a star path Gu immortal. Besides star mark, there were two other immortal Gu in the main hall. One was like a prismatic crystal, the size of a fist. It was quietly lying on a desk, without any movement. Another was like a tender white bean sprout, filled with an air of vitality. Through Star Form Land Spirit's introductions, Fang Yuan knew the crystal-like immortal Gu was Starlight Immortal Gu, while the bean sprout-like immortal Gu was known as Star Shoot. Fang Yuan could not help feeling joyous. Fortune had arrived. These two immortal Gu had much more use to Fang Yuan than Star Mark Immortal Gu. Because Starlight Mortal Gu was a necessary Gu material for the production of the Wisdom Path Star Thought Gu. Now that he had Starlight Immortal Gu, he could completely imitate the use of Strength Chi Immortal Gu in refining Airsac Gu, to refine Star Thought Gu much faster and on a much larger scale. The Starlight Immortal Gu removed the troublesome step of purchasing Starlight Mortal Gu. At the same time, with Immortal Gu as the foundation, there would be a much lower failure probability in refining Mortal Star Thought Gu. The risk involved would also be greatly mitigated, reducing the deaths of hairy men by a large degree. There were two issues created by this, however. The first problem was, to use Starlight Immortal Gu, Fang Yuan would have to modify the recipe of Star Thought Gu. The second issue was that using Starlight Immortal Gu would consume immortal essence. With Wisdom Gu and the complete Star Thought Gu recipe, Fang Yuan would have no problems in modifying the Gu recipe, it was just a matter of time. As for the second issue, it would have indeed been a problem for Fang Yuan in the past. But now, Fang Yuan was Star Form Blessed Land's owner, he had 6 sources of revenue and it would even increase to 8 in the future, his Immortal Essence Stone earnings would quadruple. Such an amount of Immortal Essence Stones made Fang Yuan have the confidence to spend Immortal Essence constantly in activating Starlight Immortal Gu. Starlight Immortal Gu increased the accumulation of Star Thought Gu by a large extent, which was of enormous assistance. And Star Shoot Immortal Gu was also very useful. Fang Yuan had once purchased a mortal killer move from Star Lord Wanxiang, called Spring Star Rain. This move irrigated the land, providing nutrition to vegetation and increasing their productivity. Ever since he got this move, Fang Yuan had been using it again and again. The grassland in the sky of Hu Immortal Blessed Land was able to maintain its current scale, it largely could be attributed to this mortal killer move. Frequent activation of Spring Star Rain consumed large numbers of Star Shoot Mortal Gu. Star Shoot Gu were only sold by Star Lord Wanxiang. Fang Yuan had once thought of freeing himself from Star Lord Wanxiang's control by researching the refinement recipe of Star Shoot Gu. But even with Wisdom Gu's help, as Fang Yuan's star path attainment was only ordinary, he could not get what he wished. At this point, Fang Yuan had Star Shoot Immortal Gu, and from now on, he would be able to use Spring Star Rain to his heart's desire. He could also raise Spring Star Rain to the level of an Immortal Killer move and use Star Shoot Immortal Gu as the core to further increase the yield of Star Fragment Grass. But Fang Yuan learned from Star Form Land Spirit, Star Lord Wanxiang did possess the Immortal Killer move Spring Star Rain. In fact, the Mortal Killer move, Spring Star Rain, which Star Lord Wanxiang sold was a simplified version of his original Spring Star Rain. The Star Shoot Gu that Star Lord Wanxiang sold were also refined by using Star Shoot Immortal Gu. This was the reason why Fang Yuan found it difficult to reverse deduce the Gu recipe from Star Shoot Gu. The reason was that Star Lord Wanxiang's Gu refinement method was done from top to bottom. Star Mark, Starlight and Star Shoot, these three Immortal Gu were all the Immortal Gu left in the Blessed Land. Star Lord Wanxiang had a total of 4 Immortal Gu. Unfortunately, the 4th Immortal Gu was destroyed in his battle with Song Zixing. Fang Yuan was thus able to obtain only 3. And he was already very satisfied with this. Generally speaking, in the entirety of the 5 regions, there were few rank 6 Gu immortals in possession of Immortal Gu. Most of them were still using Mortal Gu and Mortal Killer moves. Only the elites among rank 6 would be in possession of rank 6 Immortal Gu. For instance, rank 6 Gu immortals of Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects, and another example would be lone cultivators like Star Lord Wanxiang who had fortuitous encounters. Northern Plains' situation, however, was special. Because of the collapse of 88 True Yang Building, the rate of Gu immortals possessing Immortal Gu far surpassed the other 4 regions. In fact, Central Continent was actually in last place among the 5 regions in regards to the ownership rate of Immortal Gu. It couldn't be helped, they had the most Gu immortals after all. Fang Yuan's situation was even more special. Not counting these 3 Immortal Gu, Fang Yuan already had 14 Immortal Gu. No one would believe it if such a number was told to them. Not to mention, among these was rank 9 Wisdom Gu. Generally, even if one killed an enemy Gu immortal, it was hard for them to get Immortal Gu as spoils of battle. When Fang Yuan attacked Dong Fang Changfan, he had a huge advantage and had captured even Dong Fang Changfan's soul alive. But Dong Fang Changfan had made all the Immortal Gu self-detonate with a thought, and Fang Yuan could not even grasp even one of them. Star Lord Wanxiang was an exception. Because he strayed into star constellation Immortal Venerable's dream realm, he died unexpectedly without making any reactions. Thus his Immortal Gu were left behind and benefited Fang Yuan in the end. These 3 Immortal Gu still had Star Lord Wanxiang's will, but with Star Form Land Spirit's assistance, it would not be a big problem to subdue them. Master, this is the immortal inheritance held in the Blessed Land, please have a look. The Land Spirit handed an inheritance to Fang Yuan. It turned out that this was Star Lord Wanxiang's first fortuitous encounter. A Gu immortal inheritance regarding Star Path. It was this inheritance that guided the lone cultivator, Star Lord Wanxiang, on his path of cultivation to become a rank 6 Gu immortal. Star Lord Wanxiang's second fortuitous encounter was discovering the entrance of Starry Sky Grotto Heaven from where he plundered many resources. His luck was actually quite good. Star Lord Xiang's main cultivation was Star Path, and Starry Sky Grotto Heaven was also a Star Path Grotto Heaven, thus, they were both very compatible in terms of resources. Unlike Fang Yuan, who was a Strength Path Gu Immortal, while Hu Immortal Blessed Land was of Enslavement Path and the Guts Gu produced by Dang Hun Mountain were of Soul Path, these multiple aspects were not too compatible with each other. Unfortunately, Star Lord Xiang still died in the end, and everything he had was now Fang Yuan's. Fang Yuan stayed for a whole day in Star Form Blessed Land. He inspected a small tribe of rock men in the Blessed Land as well as the 3 desolate beast-level spinefin star dragonfish. While he was alive, Star Lord Xiang had used every possible effort to bring in this small group of rock men. He did not have Guts Gu, and Star Form Blessed Land was also not a suitable environment for the survival of rock men. As a result, many rock men had died. It was not easy for him to maintain this small group. The 3 spinefin star dragonfishes were captured from Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. There was no shortage of desolate beasts inside there. The reason he spent such large amounts of effort and capital was because Star Mark Immortal Gu's food was the fresh meat of spinefin star dragonfish. And Starlight Immortal Gu fed upon the bodies of rock men. As for Star Shoot Immortal Gu, its food was large quantities of dark star kelps. This type of kelp grew in great amounts in Broken Star Lake. This was the orthodox situation of Gu Immortals. Whatever path they cultivated, their immortal Gu would be of that path, and their immortal aperture would mostly have Dao marks of that path. In this way, they could bear the burden of feeding immortal Gu by raising the required food themselves. Unlike Fang Yuan, whose strength path immortal aperture was dead, Hu Immortal Blessed Land was an enslavement path immortal aperture, and the immortal Gu on him were of strength path, wisdom path, soul path, luck path, and other various paths. He had to get help from the outside world to feed these immortal Gu. Every time, he had to rack his brains, and the situation was unstable. In fact, Clean's soul immortal Gu had yet to be fed properly to this day. Whether it was Hu Immortal Blessed Land or his strength path immortal aperture, they both had sparse soul path Dao marks, and thus even if he wanted to, it was not possible for Fang Yuan to raise White Lotus Giant Silkworm Gu. By becoming the owner of Star Form Blessed Land, Fang Yuan's strength had doubled. 3-star path immortal Gu, for economic pillars, a complete star path inheritance. Fang Yuan would need a lot of time to absorb them fully. He also made Star Form Land's spirit keep up the request of recognizing the Blessed Land's owner in Treasure Yellow Heaven, to fabricate an image of Star Form Blessed Land still not having an owner. And he also did not plan on telling the truth to He Lu Lan and Tai Bai Yunsheng for a while. The longer he could conceal it, the longer he would conceal it. Hu Immortal Blessed Land was already exposed, Star Form Blessed Land was also in a partially exposed state, but only He Lu Lan knew this location. If, in the future, he became a fugitive, this base would be extremely important. Regarding Dang Hun Mountain and the resources inside Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan did not plan to move them away for the moment. The resources had been arranged just recently and large amounts of capital were invested. If he moved them to Star Form Blessed Land, with how astute He Lu Lan was, wouldn't she realize it? The following day, Fang Yuan went to participate in the Refinement Path Convention. With the huge influence from the large-scale competition, Central Continent was facing a surge of popularity in Gu refinement among all the people. The news of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent collaborating to ambush Song Zixing and failing had yet to be spread. Knowledge of this was limited to Gu Immortal level higher-ups. The 10 great ancient sects had lost much face. There was still no news about Song Zixing, making it appear to be a joke to other sects or lone cultivator Gu Immortals. Many Gu Immortals moved one after another, searching for any traces left behind by Song Zixing in Truyang Mountain Range. But how could they find anything? In Feng Yuan's previous life, Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects searched for over 100 years to maintain their reputation, but were still not able to find him. Song Zixing's hiding ability was simply divine, even Feng Yuan could not match him in this. Thus, Feng Yuan had no thoughts of chasing after Song Zixing from the very beginning. Finally, the agreed-upon date arrived, the day of the duel between Feng Yuan and Feng Jinhuang. Although it was not a competition, it attracted quite a large audience. Feng Jinhuang, you want to duel, but first let me see the wager. If the wager is too low, this duel will not begin. Feng Yuan spoke in full view of everyone. Whether they dueled or not, what Feng Yuan wanted was only to be in the top 6 places for the infallible inheritance. Moreover, losing in the duel would not eliminate either side or influence their rankings. Feng Jinhuang had already made preparations, secretly transmitting her voice. My wager will definitely interest you deeply. Feng Yuan, you are an immortal zombie and certainly know the pain of immortal zombies. What I have with me is a method which can let you revive. Chapter 853, Dueling Feng Jinhuang, 1/4. A revival method? Feng Yuan's eyes narrowed, a clear change appeared in his expression. Spirit Affinity House was truly worthy of being one of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent, its foundation was deep beyond imagination. Feng Yuan had painstakingly searched for a way to get rid of his immortal zombie status and revive, and Spirit Affinity House actually had a way. At this moment, when Feng Jinhuang placed this method as the wager, it directly touched upon Feng Yuan's core interests, making him unable to refuse. He. Feng Yuan laughed, restraining his agitated mood as he looked at Feng Jinhuang. Tell me, this method would not be Immortal Crane sex possession technique, right? Of course not. Feng Jinhuang smiled indifferently. I am indeed interested in your wager. But this wager is still far from matching my Hu immortal blessed land. The value of all things vary. Feng Yuan, if you were given the choice of either Hu immortal blessed land or revival, which would you choose? Of course it would be reviving. Feng Yuan chose with no hesitation inwardly, while also speaking with no hesitation. Of course it would be Hu immortal blessed land. This is my biggest foundation. Even though I have become an immortal zombie, I can maintain a good living by relying on it. Feng Jinhuang's lips twitched as she shook her head, softening her tone. Feng Yuan, you are not likely to be such a short-sighted person. But, I know you won't put Hu immortal blessed land as your wager, and I also cannot forcibly demand you to do so. Let's talk about something more practical. If I lose, I will tell you the method of revival. You can rest assured that this method already has a successful precedent. But if you lose, we can undergo transactions. Feng Yuan looked at Feng Jinhuang's slight smile and confident appearance. He narrowed his eyes and asked, What transactions? Feng Jinhuang replied, if you lose, you need to make a deal with Spirit Affinity House to supply Daoist Gu for the long term. The price can be discussed as long as it doesn't overstep the limit. But you must deliver them in time and in adequate quantity. If you lack souls, Spirit Affinity House will sell them to you, and the price will even be 30% lower than the market price. These transactions must take precedence, even over those of Immortal Crane sect. No matter how many Daoist Gu you have, you must first supply them to Spirit Affinity House before selling to other places. Hearing this, Feng Yuan could not help but look at Feng Jinhuang in a different light again, having a completely new opinion in regards to this young girl in front of him. He had not expected her to mature to this degree in just this period of time. As expected of a genius. No, rather than that, it should be said that she has capable people behind her and was educated well. Feng Jinhuang's demand, as far as Feng Yuan was concerned, was truly lenient and could even be said to be too generous. But Daoist Gu, to Feng Jinhuang, was an urgent need. The reason? Feng Jin Huang could explore dream realms with Dream Wing's immortal Gu. Even with the help of the immortal Gu, her soul would still feel weakened and could be injured. Guts Gu was among the highest quality soul strengthening method in the whole world, even spectral soul demon Venerable had praised it. Feng Jin Huang had originally challenged Fang Yuan out of juvenile temperament, it was an action taken in a fit of anger. But right now, the discussion about wagers with Fang Yuan was based on the present situation, it was practical and also concerned benefits. This was a mature action. If Feng Jin Huang had asked Fang Yuan to put Hu Immortal Blessed Land or Dang Hun Mountain as the wager, Fang Yuan definitely would not agree. And although Fang Yuan was using Immortal Crane Sect's name, the relation between him and Immortal Crane Sect was well known by all the 10 great ancient sects. Fang Yuan absolutely had no qualms in regards to Immortal Crane Sect's reputation and would definitely agree to Feng Jin Huang's duel with this. Thus, Feng Jin Huang made this request. To Fang Yuan, selling Guts Gu to Spirit Affinity House naturally had its benefits. The first benefit was he could increase the sales volume, earning much more Immortal Essence Stones. Who would not like having more Immortal Essence Stones? The second benefit was that Fang Yuan would have a connection to Spirit Affinity House. If one day, he fell out with Immortal Crane Sect, he would have an alternative path. In fact, Fang Yuan's original intention in accepting Feng Jin Huang's challenge had been to cooperate with Spirit Affinity House. As Feng Jin Huang explored the dream realm multiple times, she realized the value of Guts Gu and wanted to obtain some of the benefits from Immortal Crane Sect. And Fang Yuan was also willing to do this. If he truly reached a deal with Spirit Affinity House, it would also be extremely helpful to him in managing his relationship with Immortal Crane Sect. Regardless of victory or loss, this duel is beneficial to me. Anyway, the result of the duel has nothing to do with the competition. Something is wrong, her request is also to lower my will to fight. Fang Yuan suddenly had a realization and understood another layer of intention behind this move from Feng Jin Huang. Let's start then, the final winner of this contest will be me. Fang Yuan's eyes shined brightly as he laughed heartily. Feng Jin Huang's gaze flashed, that is not for certain. Get the latest ch. Drs on n/velbin.com. The wagers were set, both sides began to discuss of the contents of this duel. Feng Jin Huang suggested refining River Wave Trace Gu as the task. River Wave Trace Gu was a rank 5 water path Gu worm, and formed a series with rank 3 Water Trace Gu, rank 4 Wave Trace Gu and rank 6 Worldly Wave Trace Immortal Gu. Fang Yuan immediately refused. Spirit Affinity House specialized in cultivating and using water path Gu worms, this could be seen from the Immortal Gu House, Water Pavilion. If the task was set to refine River Wave Trace Gu, Feng Jin Huang's advantage would be too big. Fang Yuan suggested refining Blood Steps Gu. This was a rank 3 blood path movement type Gu worm. Feng Jin Huang also refused outright. What a joke, who did not know Fang Yuan was proficient in blood path refinement techniques, and Feng Jin Huang did not have confidence in refining blood path Gu. The two discussed for a while before finally settling on a rank 5 fire path Gu worm, 5 orifices fire pagoda Gu, and it would be done in a martial duel. The duel would not be private, but be a completely open contest like the refinement path convention. Soon, similar materials appeared in front of the two sides. To maintain fairness, both sides were provided with the same Gu recipe. The winner would be the side that could successfully refine 5 orifices fire pagoda Gu first. Unlike the previous contests, because it was in the martial duel format, whenever they reached a specific stage, both refiners would have a chance to attack each other once. Under everyone's gaze, Fang Yuan and Feng Jin Huang sat opposite each other, each occupying an end of the stage with a gap of around 260 steps between them. The duel began. Fang Yuan immediately inspected the refinement materials. He needed to have a complete understanding of every material. If some materials were defective, it would greatly influence the Gu refinement. Fang Yuan checked very carefully. Sometimes the task organizers would intentionally supply some defective materials and even tamper with them so the defects are hidden, causing the Gu master to not be able to easily detect them. If they were truly deceived, it would cause quite a problem when refining the Gu. This arrangement had practical significance. Usually, when refining Gu masters would not always be able to gather perfect refinement materials. Sometimes, there would be some damage because the materials might have been stored for too long, or perhaps damaged when being transported or seized in battles. Or there might be substandard refinement materials sold in the market, which would have to be distinguished by the Gu master themselves. Thus, inspecting Gu refinement materials was a part of refinement path attainment. In this duel of refining 5 orifices fire pagoda Gu, the convention supplied as many as 1,000 types of materials. There was not a single Gu worm, they were all grass, flowers, stones, bones and so on. Fang Yuan inspected all the materials, using an entire hour. Afterwards, he inspected the Gu recipe provided by the convention. There were altogether 5 Gu recipes: Rank 1, Single Aperture Charcoal Gu, Rank 2, Double Orifice Stove Gu, Rank 3, 3 Orifices Fire Hut Gu, Rank 4, 4 Orifices Fire Tower Gu, as well as Rank 5, 5 Orifices Fire Pagoda Gu. These 5 Gu worms were a series, sharing the same origin. The first step in refining 5 orifices Fire Pagoda Gu was to refine large numbers of Rank 1 Single Orifice Charcoal Gu. Then, using the Single Orifice Charcoal Gu as the main materials to refine Double Orifice Stove Gu. From Rank 1 to Rank 2, Rank 2 to Rank 3, Rank 3 to Rank 4, and then from Rank 4 to Rank 5, finally refining 5 orifices Fire Pagoda Gu. It was because there were many steps and the process was cumbersome. Both sides were provided with 1,000 types of Gu refinement materials. With Fang Yuan's wisdom path methods, he could modify the Gu recipe and cut down on some steps of the Gu refinement process. He could even directly refine 5 orifices Fire Pagoda Gu with the materials provided. However, after some thought, Fang Yuan gave up on the idea and decided to move step by step. There were many reasons. First, he was unable to rely on wisdom Gu here. Second, modifying Gu recipes took a lot of time, and there would only be more losses than gains. Moreover, this was a martial duel, both sides could attack 5 times in total to disturb the Gu refinement. If a Gu recipe to refine it directly was used, once the process was disturbed, the previous efforts would be wasted. It was more stable to move step by step. While Fang Yuan was inspecting the Gu refinement materials, Feng Jin Huang was checking the Gu recipes. While Fang Yuan was inspecting the Gu recipes, Feng Jin Huang meticulously checked the refinement materials. The order was different, but when they started the Gu refinement, it was almost at the same time. They have finally begun. They used up over an hour to inspect the materials and the Gu recipes. They are really patient. This contest concerns the face of Immortal Crane's sect and Spirit Affinity House. It is a battle of reputation of 2 of the ancient sects. The spectators started talking. Some were in favor of Feng Jin Huang while some thought highly of Fang Yuan. There were also 2 factions that had formed in the audience. The numerically greater disciples of Spirit Affinity House were in a mutual showdown of glaring with Immortal Crane's sect's disciples. The elders leading Immortal Crane's sect's group had ugly expressions. Fang Yuan had placed Guts Gu as the wager without reporting to the higher-ups of Immortal Crane's sect, and they were not feeling good about this. At first, Fang Yuan and Feng Jin Huang's refinement techniques were the same. During this process, Fang Yuan used his skilled refinement techniques to gradually surpass Feng Jin Huang, progressing faster and slowly obtaining a slight lead. After all, Fang Yuan had the practical experience of his previous life, while even though Feng Jin Huang used Immortal Gu to explore the dream realm and improve her refinement path attainment quickly, she still lacked tempering in putting them to practice. To catch up to Fang Yuan, Feng Jin Huang used a refinement path killer move. Double action. Her hands trembled, and the lump of fire she was maintaining suddenly split into two, forming two fire lumps. Refinement path killer move, small wishful hand. Two small and compact hands flew out of Feng Jin Huang's mind, completely formed from will, emitting a jade luster. Feng Jin Huang's two hands constantly regulated and controlled the intensity and the temperature of the two fire lumps, while the two small wishful hands grabbed materials and threw them into the fire. Wonderful! Using two killer moves consecutively. Feng Jin Huang is well prepared, now her speed is much faster than that of Fang Yuan. Clamorous discussions were being exchanged between the spectators. Chapter 854, Dueling Feng Jin Huang, 2/4. Using two immortal killer moves consecutively. Under the mask, Fang Yuan's gaze was sharp as a knife. But he immediately turned his gaze towards the fire in his hands. Phew, that was close. Outside the stage, a female disciple of Spirit Affinity House breathed out a sigh of relief. Senior Sister Qin Wan, what was close? I clearly saw First Senior Sister Jin Huang use two refinement path killer moves in a row, catching up immediately. Another female disciple of Spirit Affinity House was sitting beside Qin Wan. She had a chubby face, her name was Sun Yao, and she asked this curiously. Junior Sister Sun Yao, you need to understand that this duel is different from what we've seen before. This is a martial duel. In martial duels, the refiners can attack to disturb the other side's refinement. Qin Wan explained patiently. Ah, they can do that? It is already so hard for me to refine Gu normally, but if I were to be disturbed on top of that. Heavens! Sun Yao pursed her lips, revealing an expression showing that she did not even dare to imagine such a thing. This martial duel format is clearly meant to make one suffer. Whoever thought of this is really strict. No. Qin Wan, however, had an expression of approval. Being able to resist disturbances is one of the most important aspects of refinement path. In our cultivation journeys, perhaps one day we would suffer a sneak attack when we are refining Gu. In fact, many times when we leave the sect to complete the sect missions outside, because of all sorts of damage that may occur to Gu worms, we often have to refine new Gu in the wild. Using the same logic, when we are facing a strong enemy and discover the enemy refining Gu, we would also choose to sneak attack and take the enemy by surprise, turning the situation in battle in our favor. This is the practical significance of the martial duel format. Junior Sister Sun Yao, you also know Gu masters have to use all their concentration during the refinement process, because slight carelessness can result in failure and backlash. But, when you refine Gu outside, you also need to pay some attention to your surroundings. First Senior Sister Jin Huang used two refinement path killer moves in a row just earlier. That was a risky move. Because the moment she activated the killer move, the entirety of her attention was naturally focused on the Gu worms forming the killer move. If it were an ordinary Gu master, they might have already lost control over the flames and failed in Gu refinement if they had to divert their attention in activating the killer move. If at this moment, Fang Yuan, that demon, had attacked First Senior Sister Jin Huang, it might have caused significant trouble to her. Hearing Qin Wan's explanation, Sun Yao came to a realization. So it was like that, then that truly was dangerous. Fortunately, that demon Fang Yuan did not attack. Because Fang Yuan had, time and time again, used blood path refinement techniques at crucial moments, disciples of Spirit Affinity House who disliked him privately called him a demon. However, there were, in fact, many demons in the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. Get the latest ch. Ters on n. /velbin.com. For instance, the third supreme elder of Immortal Crane sect, Lord Tiger Demon, was a demonic path Gu immortal in his early years before he was recruited by Immortal Crane sect. The sect that exhibited this the most was actually Spirit Affinity House itself. The late Sword Immortal Bo Qing was a person of the demonic path with an extremely murderous nature, but was reformed through love with Spirit Affinity House's Fairy Imo Yao. In the end, Bo Qing was recruited into Spirit Affinity House. At present, the story of Fairy Bai Qing and Feng Jiu was widely spread, and Feng Jiu was formerly of the demonic path as well. Central Continent was so large and was famous for producing outstanding champions. Once in a while, there would be some astonishing demonic cultivators and lone cultivators that would shake the world. To maintain control of the overall situation and to protect their interests, the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent would recruit these people. It was the best method to effectively retain their authority. He did not attack. That's a pity. Feng Jin Huang inwardly sighed. Out of the 2 lumps of fire burning in front of her, one suddenly extinguished. What's going on? People in the audience involuntarily exclaimed. Don't tell me that demon, Fang Yuan, had already attacked and disturbed First Senior Sister, causing half the Gu refinement to fail. This demon is too cunning. What attack did he use? We did not even see it. Sun Yao anxiously cried out, her tone filled with loathing towards Fang Yuan. No, that's not right. The elder hosting this duel did not say anything. This means that demon, Fang Yuan, did not attack. So it was like that. Qin Wan's eyes brightened as she suddenly came to a realization. Originally, First Senior Sister had put up a facade of using 2 killer moves. It was a trap meant to entice Fang Yuan to attack her. If Fang Yuan attacked, his mind would be focused on his attack at that instant, which would expose a weak point. First Senior Sister would then have a higher chance of successfully counter-attacking. My goodness, was that actually the case? Sun Yao's small, chubby mouth opened wide in shock at the battle of wits behind this contest. Qin Wan had a serious expression. I was also deceived just now. The truth of the matter is First Senior Sister set up a trap, but that demon Fang Yuan saw through it and was not fooled. Junior Sister Sun Yao, watch closely, this contest is going to be extremely splendid. The contest between these two is absolutely the best of this generation. Okay. Sun Yao nodded, her eyes staring at the stage without blinking. The 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent had always fiercely competed. Not only did their Gu immortals compete, the disciples also had a similar type of competition. There was no doubt that Feng Jin Huang was the best of this generation within the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. However, in the contest for Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan suddenly appeared and kicked Feng Jin Huang down the mountain. As for the events behind the scenes, they were not explained to disciples like Sun Yao and Qin Wan, and even Immortal Crane sect's own disciples and most of their elders thought Fang Yuan was a genius disciple, secretly nurtured by the sect. In the previous round, Feng Jin Huang was defeated, and this duel, in which Feng Jin Huang wanted to reclaim her prestige, involved a contest between the best disciples of the 10 great ancient sections. It was a hidden clash between Spirit Affinity House and Immortal Crane sect. Thus, almost all of the audience was asking a question: who was the best Gu master among the younger generation? What they did not know was, Fang Yuan had already become a Gu immortal. Although he was only an immortal zombie, he was already someone they could no longer decipher. Meanwhile, Feng Jin Huang possessed Dream Wing's immortal Gu, and had already activated it, gaining enormous benefits. Bystanders could only see such surface details, but both competitors did not see much importance in the reputation aspect. Feng Jin Huang had already matured a lot and realized what benefits meant, while Fang Yuan was way beyond her maturity. The competition continued. Fang Yuan had seen through Feng Jin Huang's trap, but between Feng Jin Huang's two killer moves, small wishful hand was real. It was unlike double action that had only been a facade. With the help of the two small hands made of will, Feng Jin Huang's refinement speed was slightly above that of Fang Yuan. And as time passed, the gap between the two gradually increased. However, this gap was not obvious. Fang Yuan maintained his rhythm, and using solely Gu refinement techniques without any killer moves, he maintained the fire and was now almost finished processing the materials. He used Gu refinement techniques and not refinement path killer moves. Techniques were the summation of purely skills and experience. They were the foundation of Gu refinement. Very skilled. Even though he is the enemy, I cannot help but admit this demon, Fang Yuan, has a very solid foundation in Gu refinement. Even some elders from our sect do not have as solid of a foundation as him. Qin Wan suddenly sighed, after having watched fixedly for a long while. He has a grasp of so many Gu refinement techniques, he has used at least 30 types by now. But I feel our first senior sister is still the more amazing one. She fell back a little at the start, but quickly caught up later. Now, no matter how that demon Fang Yuan pursues, he won't be able to catch up. This small wishful hand killer move is truly convenient. Sun Yao said, admiringly. No. Qin Wan shook her head, first senior sister's lead might not necessarily be a good thing. Maintaining a killer move requires primeval essence and also is taxing upon the mind. On the contrary, that demon Fang Yuan has only been using basic Gu refinement techniques, which do not have as much of a burden on the mind. As this continues over time, his mind will be less taxed than first senior sister's, which will be of great help in the later stages of Gu refinement. Ah, it is like this. Then, isn't first senior sister in danger? Senior sister Qin Wan, you are saying first senior sister gained a lead from using a refinement path killer move, but is instead in a disadvantage? Although your words sound reasonable, how could it be like that? Sun Yao felt a headache. He, junior sister Sun Yao, this is the brilliance of the refinement path convention. You have just begun your cultivation journey and have yet to come in contact with many things, you will slowly understand them in future. Qin Wan smiled, but she was feeling heavy internally. This demon, Fang Yuan, is too skilled. He is keeping pace with first senior sister just by repeatedly using Gu refinement techniques. Even though first senior sister used a refinement path killer move, she is not able to create a large lead. It can't go on like this. Feng Jin Huang was feeling some mental exhaustion. It had not been long since the competition began, and both sides were still at the stage of refining rank 1 single orifice charcoal Gu. According to logic, Feng Jin Huang's should still have plentiful mental energy, and not be in a state of exhaustion. However, estimates was one thing, the actual competition could be completely different. Feng Jin Huang could disregard the gazes from outside the stage. Her talents were outstanding, and with Gu immortals as parents, she had been the center of attention since she was young, she was already used to it. The pressure on Feng Jin Huang mainly came from Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan displayed an incomparably solid foundation, and was relying on just Gu refinement techniques to maintain pace with Feng Jin Huang, while even though she had used a refinement path killer move, she was not able to surpass him greatly in progress. Fang Yuan's extraordinary performance and formidable achievements made the world overrate his attainment level. Feng Jin Huang had already been feeling pressure before the duel. After the duel started, Fang Yuan was in pursuit with a stable speed, which further increased the pressure on Feng Jin Huang. This pressure was greatly wearing down on Feng Jin Huang's mind. She was slowly starting to feel exhausted and uneasy internally. It seems my refinement path quasi-grandmaster attainment cannot match Fang Yuan's refinement path attainment. What should I do? Feng Jin Huang began to think and plan quickly, while refining the Gu. I have used a refinement path killer move, my mind is also being worn down rapidly. The duel has only just begun, and as time goes on, Fang Yuan's advantage will become even more clear. But if I stop using the killer move and compete with just Gu refinement techniques, I still cannot match Fang Yuan. My greatest advantage is the large numbers of refinement path killer moves that I carefully prepared. Chapter 855, Dueling Feng Jin Huang, 3/4. The duel stipulated they could only use the materials provided by the convention. Although they could launch attacks and use refinement path killer moves, any methods affecting the soul or mind, like refreshing the mind or strengthening the soul, were completely prohibited. Feng Jin Huang was the one who set this rule. It was to prevent Fang Yuan from using Guts Gu to strengthen his soul during the duel. The soul and mind were closely connected. Feng Jin Huang made this move to limit Fang Yuan's advantage in this aspect, but she had not expected she would be the first to suffer a drawback from this rule. Whoosh! Suddenly, Feng Jin Huang flicked her pinky finger, shooting out a speck of golden light. The golden light was extremely fast, reaching Fang Yuan in the blink of an eye, targeting the refinement flames in Fang Yuan's hands. If the golden light hit the fire, even with Fang Yuan's ability, the refinement would fail, he would have to bear the backlash and start over. However, how could a person as cautious as Fang Yuan not pay attention to the defense of such an important area? Fin the new. St. Ovals on n/. Ding! A crisp sound echoed. The golden light was 3 inches from the fire when it clashed into a formless barrier and was blocked. Fang Yuan's gaze was calm, the fire in his hands was not affected in the slightest. Feng Jin Huang's attack was blocked by Fang Yuan without batting an eyelid. Only after this attack had been defended did the Gu masters outside the stage react. Spirit Affinity House's Feng Jin Huang was the first to initiate an attack. But the attack was blocked by Immortal Crane Sec's Fang Yuan. What was that attack just now? It was so fast. Feng Jin Huang made an error in her choice. How could Fang Yuan not defend such an important area? It might have been better to attack Fang Yuan directly instead and injure him. Look, Feng Jin Huang is using a refinement path killer move again. There was a clamor outside the stage, but in the stage, the scene was quiet, isolated from all the sounds outside. Attacking the enemy's vital points, then using this moment of relative safety to use another refinement path killer move. Fang Yuan glanced at Feng Jin Huang, coldly smiling inwardly. It seems you are using all your strength. Worthy of being Feng Jin Huang, even in your youth, you are deeply aware of your own strengths and weaknesses. I have to say this is a sensible choice. Fang Yuan praised her in his mind, but he continued to be unmoved, still refining Gu in the same way as before. Feng Jin Huang used up a precious chance to make a move to attack Fang Yuan's refinement flames, and also took this opportunity to use a second refinement path killer move. With the help of 2 killer moves, her refinement speed increased sharply, and gradually Fang Yuan was thrown behind. Without the pressure from Fang Yuan, Feng Jin Huang immediately felt slightly relaxed, a layer of tension inside her loosened, and her refinement speed further increased a little. In this duel, Fang Yuan and Feng Jin Huang each had 5 chances to attack. Because it was only a duel, not a life and death battle, the power they could use every time they attacked was limited to a certain level. The first time, they were only allowed to use rank 1 Gu. The second time, they could use rank 2 Gu. And so on, until the 5th time, where they could use rank 5 Gu. It was the same with defense, they could only use Gu worms of corresponding rank. This was another limitation to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan was an immortal zombie after all, with an immortal killer move. If she was attacked by Giant Hand, it would be difficult for Feng Jin Huang to resist it. Of course, Feng Jin Huang had Gu immortal parents, so she would naturally have immortal essence in her body along with immortal Gu and the will or emotion of Gu immortals. There was not a high likelihood of Fang Yuan truly killing her. This time, she is using 2 refinement path killer moves at once to gain a lead. Outside the stage, Sun Yao excitedly shouted. Yes, it is a pity she used one of the 5 chances to attack. But this is also a classic tactic, we still have to see the result of the refinement to determine the outcome. Qin Wan pondered as she gazed at the stage. Time continued to pass. Fang Yuan fell further and further behind Feng Jin Huang, but the strange part was that he was not the least bit hurried, seemingly having no intention to overtake Feng Jin Huang. Fang Yuan was still using Gu refinement techniques, refining single orifice charcoal Gu step by step. While Feng Jin Huang had already begun refining the rank 2 double orifice stove Gu. Soon, praises and sighs could be heard outside the stage. Feng Jin Huang had used a 3rd refinement path killer move, increasing her speed once again. An hour later, Feng Jin Huang attacked Fang Yuan and took the chance when Fang Yuan defended, she used a 4th refinement path killer move. 4 killer moves were used together, there were 6 lumps of fire floating in front of Feng Jin Huang, each lump was accompanied by a small wishful hand that constantly grabbed materials and threw them into the fire. With the help of the small wishful hands, the exact amount of the Gu refinement materials thrown into the flames was extremely precise. From the help of 4 killer moves, Feng Jin Huang's refinement speed had long since surpassed that of Fang Yuan, and soon she started on 3 orifices fire hut Gu. While Fang Yuan had just now begun refining double orifice stove Gu. Looking at Feng Jin Huang advancing triumphantly, throwing Fang Yuan far behind, many were having doubts, what was Fang Yuan playing at? Sun Yao grinned, first senior sister's victory is guaranteed. Qin Wan was also a refinement path genius whom Spirit Affinity House paid great attention to, it was just that she had yet to mature. She was also in support of Sun Yao's words, if the situation continues like this, first senior sister has a high chance of victory. With my ability, my maximum limit is maintaining 5 refinement path killer moves. But this is the martial duel format, I must leave some energy behind to deal with Fang Yuan's attacks. Of the 5 chances to attack, I have already used 2, while Fang Yuan has only been defending. Could it be my conditions were too alluring that he is forfeiting? Feng Jin Huang could not understand Fang Yuan's behavior and felt some doubts for a moment. 15 minutes passed, Feng Jin Huang had made good progress in refining 3 orifices fire hut Gu, she was past the halfway mark. Right now, Feng Jin Huang's dominance was extremely obvious, leading Fang Yuan by a huge distance. It is time to attack. Fang Yuan's gaze was clear, and as he sensed that the time was ripe, he sent out a Gu worm from his immortal aperture. I am attacking. He suddenly spoke softly. Ah! Feng Jin Huang's attention was immediately attracted, her bright and beautiful eyes gazed at Fang Yuan, while continuing with her Gu refinement. Finally attacking. But what is the reason for warning me beforehand? Feng Jin Huang was extremely cautious. Fang Yuan chuckled, Feng Jin Huang, be careful. This Gu is the rank 1 ghost fire Gu. Feng Jin Huang narrowed her eyes, a vigilant look flashed past her eyes as she began to think rapidly, it is certain to be rank 1 Gu, this is Fang Yuan's first attack, so he can only use rank 1 methods. But it might not necessarily be ghost fire Gu, maybe he showed that Gu to mislead me. After all, a Gu worm's external appearance can be disguised. I need to be extremely careful. While she was thinking, Fang Yuan activated the Gu worm in his hand. The moment this Gu activated, it transformed into a small lump of eerie ghost fire, which then slowly moved towards Feng Jin Huang. It is really ghost fire Gu. Feng Jin Huang was slightly stunned. Right at this time, the ghost fire Gu suddenly sped up and shot towards Feng Jin Huang. Come! Just a mere rank 1 ghost fire Gu. Feng Jin Huang's eyes shined sharply with confidence. She had already prepared sufficiently and could easily block a rank 1 ghost fire Gu. When the ghost fire Gu charged over, she even had the time to think of the possibility of Fang Yuan making continuous attacks. However, the ghost fire suddenly came to a halt, stopping near Feng Jin Huang. Afterwards, the ghost fire slowly circled Feng Jin Huang, swaying around either side of her. What? Feng Jin Huang was startled internally. Fang Yuan, what is the meaning of this? The next moment, her expression sank as realization dawned upon her. In this duel, the Gu master could only defend in the range of a meter. The ghost fire Gu did not encroach the range of a meter around Feng Jin Huang, making her unable to defend. The ghost fire floating around could only be considered as part of the process of Fang Yuan's attack. He is using rank 1 ghost fire to pressure me, to divert my attention. Feng Jin Huang was astute and was soon able to understand the intent behind this move. So sinister. Many people, outside the stage, exclaimed as they realized his plan. Sun Yao was filled with righteous indignation. That demon Fang Yuan is using a loophole in the rules. With a ghost fire floating in front of you, who can concentrate on refining Gu? Does nobody care about this? He is too shameless. Qin Wan shook her head, saying solemnly, the rules of the duel were set by both sides. This pending offensive is also a classic battle tactic in the martial duel format, it can't be considered shameless. Damn it! Cold sweat began to seep out of Feng Jin Huang's forehead. Ghost fires can injure the soul. I have used up a lot of my mental energy. If I am really affected by it, I will definitely slip up. But if I just blindly defend, my mind will be tied down in observing the movement of the ghost fire, and my Gu refinement speed will decrease. There was still a way. Feng Jin Huang could initiate an attack and destroy this ghost fire. But this was not worthwhile. Because this would be her third attack, which meant a rank 3 method. Using a rank 3 method to cancel Fang Yuan's rank 1 ghost fire Gu, no matter what, it would be her loss. Maybe this is his intention, he wants to lure me into using up a precious chance of attacking. Feng Jin Huang gritted her teeth as she looked at Fang Yuan. Controlling a ghost fire also expended one's mental energy. But Fang Yuan had only been using Gu refinement techniques and not refinement path killer moves. It could be said his mental energy was at full capacity, it was more than sufficient to control a ghost fire. Oh! Not destroying my ghost fire? He, you are really patient. Fang Yuan suddenly laughed, then, how about another ghost fire? Under everyone's gazes, Fang Yuan took out a second ghost fire Gu. Feng Jin Huang, look closely, this is rank 2 ghost fire Gu. Fang Yuan calmly spoke, unlike Feng Jin Huang's sneak attacks, he openly announced his methods. The style of Fang Yuan's attacks was the completely opposite of Feng Jin Huang. Feng Jin Huang's 2 attacks were quick, accurate and relentless, attacking the enemy's vital points and forcing Fang Yuan into defense, while she took the chance to use refinement path killer moves. However, Fang Yuan's methods could be described with one word, slow. The second ghost fire floated slowly towards Feng Jin Huang, stopping a meter in front of her. This ghost fire was created from rank 2 ghost fire Gu, it was double the size of the first ghost fire. The 2 ghost fires circled around Feng Jin Huang, the pressure on Feng Jin Huang swiftly doubled. Chapter 856, Dueling Feng Jin Huang, 4/4. The 2 ghost fires moved about here and there, they went far and near, with no set pattern. Feng Jin Huang had to be vigilant of these 2 flames, while also paying attention to refining Gu. Feng Jin Huang was soon unable to bear it. Bang! A soft explosion resounded as one of the Gu refinement fires she controlled was extinguished. The Gu worm inside the flame had already been refined to an incomplete form, but it was a pity, everything was lost. First senior sister slipped up. So unfortunate, that Gu worm only had the final 3 steps remaining. Sun Yao stamped her foot in anger. Qin Wan also had a heavy expression. This is the first mistake since the duel began, although first senior sister has a deep foundation, surely enough, dividing her attention to handle so many things was too forceful. What should she do now? Sun Yao gazed over, seemingly asking for advice. Qin Wan mumbled, if it were me, I would dispel a refinement path killer move right now. Because the lead is great, as long as I can maintain this lead and make no more mistakes, the one in a hurry would be the other side. But dispelling a killer move is similar to activating it, because in order to produce a change in the situation, one needs to focus their attention, which can generate a moment of weakness. Fin the new. St. Uvels on n /velbin.com. At this moment, on the stage, Feng Jin Huang also had a similar thought, should I dispel a refinement path killer move? Is this Fang Yuan's intention? No, I still have a way. I can use my third chance to send out a sonic wave, and destroy these 2 ghost fires at once. Geniuses like Feng Jin Huang had pride carved in their very bones, and would not be willing to admit defeat. Feng Jin Huang's eyes brightened at this thought, but when she cast her gaze towards Fang Yuan, her heart instantly chilled. Fang Yuan was wearing a malevolent mask, his piercingly cold eyes protruded from behind the holes of the mask. Behind it, there seemed to be a smiling expression with a hint of ridicule. No. Feng Jin Huang's mind trembled at this gaze, this is Fang Yuan's trap. He is already waiting for it. The moment I use my third attack, Fang Yuan will grasp this chance to immediately attack. At that time, my mind would be taxed to the limit and it will be very difficult for me to deal with the attack, I might not even be able to defend and be struck by his attack. Damn! Feng Jin Huang gritted her teeth, a drop of cold sweat slid down from her forehead to her eyebrow and down her cheek. It can't go on like this, I need to find a way, what should I do? Think carefully, think quickly. Bang! While she was in the process of thinking, another lump of fire she was controlling exploded. This explosion was much more severe than the first one. Other lumps of fire were also affected. Feng Jin Huang quickly dispelled her disorganized thoughts and did her best to stabilize the other fire lumps. Ah! First senior sister made a mistake again, how could this be? Not good, first senior sister is injured. Sun Yao cried out with her head in her hands. The demon Fang Yuan brought her too much pressure, first senior sister should have been trying to think of an urgent countermeasure, and this decreased her attention towards the Gu refinement, causing a slip-up. A failure in Gu refinement means there will be backlash, fortunately her injuries are not severe. Qin Wan's tone revealed her nervousness, she let out a breath of cloudy air and continued, but, this is also a good thing. Sun Yao did not understand, and grumbled in anger, senior sister Qin Wan, what are you saying? First senior sister failed in Gu refinement, and also suffered injuries, why is this a good thing? She has lost 2 lumps of fire, but her mind is instead partially freed up. She now has the spare energy to cope with the present situation. Qin Wan analyzed. Sun Yao patted her chest as she suddenly realized this, right? He. Fang Yuan laughed again. Feng Jin Huang's heart immediately sank when she heard Fang Yuan's laughter. She raised her head and sure enough, Fang Yuan took out a third Gu worm. Fang Yuan spoke just like earlier, look closely, this is a rank 3 ghost fire Gu. The next moment, 3 ghost fires were flying around Feng Jin Huang. Damn it! Sun Yao stamped her foot in anger. This demon is too shameless. First senior sister has just been able to catch a breather, and now he sends another ghost fire. He is still thinking of forcing first senior sister to make a mistake. That's right. Qin Wan had a grave expression. Like this, the pressure on first senior sister has increased sharply. She probably has to use all her remaining attention on defending. Sun Yao clenched her teeth, subconsciously waving her fist. This demon is not concentrating on refining his gu, instead he is spending his mental energy on the ghost fires. This is a classic case of neglecting the proper task. He is truly terrible. I really want to give him a few punches. Damn it, how can this be? Feng Jin Huang fell into a great predicament. She was clearly in the lead, but when Feng Yuan made a move, she was forced into a passive state. Feng Jin Huang knew the situation was far from good. The tempo of the duel had already fallen into Feng Yuan's grasp. She wanted to counterattack, but she did not have enough ability. The three ghost fires floated around her. Sometimes they would even breach the 1 meter distance before retreating immediately. They were clearly being manipulated to tease Feng Jin Huang. Feng Jin Huang was only a young girl after all. She was filled with fury towards Feng Yuan's teasing, but was not able to vent them. She would have to take a risk if she wanted to get rid of the three hateful ghost fires. But reason told Feng Jin Huang that she might not necessarily need to take the risk. Because even after she slipped up twice, she still had a large lead over Feng Yuan. As long as she maintained this dominance, victory would be hers. However, when Feng Jin Huang began refining 4 orifices fire tower gu, a short while later, Feng Yuan also began refining 4 orifices fire tower gu. This discovery immediately startled Feng Jin Huang. When was it that he actually closed in the gap between us? Impossible, he has clearly not used even one refinement path killer move yet. But the fact was that Feng Yuan had relied on just gu refinement techniques, using purely basic skills to close the gap bit by bit, and unknowingly, he had caught up to Feng Jin Huang. The gu masters outside the stage also discovered this. Unbelievable, this demon actually caught up. Spirit Affinity House's female disciples cried out in shock. Actually relying on just gu refinement techniques to overcome refinement path killer moves. Feng Yuan's ability far surpasses Feng Jin Huang. The people who overrated Feng Yuan continued to overrate him. How is this possible? Feng Yuan definitely cheated. Everyone knows the power of refinement path killer moves. He did not use a single killer move but caught up. Impossible. Sun Yao was dissatisfied. What kind of eyes does the hosting elder have? Why is he not stopping the duel and investigating this demon Feng Yuan? Qin Wan, however, heaved a deep sigh. Keep quiet, junior sister. Gu refinement techniques naturally cannot match refinement path killer moves, but in this duel, they can overcome killer moves. Ah, senior sister, what do you mean? Because the crucial factor for victory is not the means, but the 2 gu masters themselves. At the moment, the refinement has already reached the middle to later stages. Feng Yuan's mind is still fresh, while first senior sister has been exerting her mind since the start. The moment she could relax, Feng Yuan used the threat of ghost fire gu to overwhelm her. First senior sister is already tired. Without ample energy in her mind, any powerful refinement path killer moves will only play a secondary role, thus her gu refinement speed will naturally slow down. Qin Wan sighed, before continuing, this is all Feng Yuan's plan. When first senior sister mentioned refining 5 orifices fire pagoda gu as the task, he agreed directly. But the gu recipes and the refinement materials were all put forward by him. The moment this battle of attrition began, he let himself fall behind, preserving his mental energy. At the middle stages, he finally attacked, and although he was behind, he was able to grasp the initiative. Because of her dominance, first senior sister did not want to take a risk, thus she kept delaying dealing with them. However, she did not know that this was Fang Yuan's sinister plan. Now at the later stages, first senior sister is too tired, her speed is getting slower and will soon be overtaken by Fang Yuan. What? Sun Yao worriedly gazed towards the stage. Soon, her worry turned into reality. Fang Yuan slowly progressed to being level with Feng Jin Huang, and slowly overtook her. Is first senior sister going to lose? Sun Yao's eyes reddened and tears streamed out. First senior sister clearly put in so much effort to arrive at the end, she even got injured, but this despicable demon is going to win. I am not willing to accept this. I also feel discontent. Qin Wan sighed, but first senior sister still has a chance. There is still a chance. Sun Yao turned her head and looked happily at her senior sister Qin Wan. Qin Wan nodded, right, don't forget first senior sister still has 3 chances to attack. 1 rank 3 attack, 1 rank 4 attack and 1 rank 5 attack. Every attack will be stronger than the previous one, this is the way to make a comeback. This contest has yet to end, there is still hope. Right, we still have hope. First senior sister, you can do it. Sun Yao's eyes brightened as she suddenly shouted loudly. Her voice attracted the gazes of the people nearby. The intense sense of honor to the sect and feeling of belonging made the hundreds of disciples of Spirit Affinity House shout together to boost Feng Jin Huang's morale. Although their voices could not transmit to the stage, Feng Jin Huang was able to sense it. These guys. I cannot lose, I will win. It is time to use my trump card. Refinement Path Killer Move, Ink Transformation. Feng Jin Huang shouted in her mind, and simultaneously made 3 attacks in a row towards Fang Yuan. Feng Jin Huang staked everything on this, using all her remaining chances to attack. Paltry trick. Fang Yuan blocked all these attacks, while sending out the 3 ghost fires to interfere with her as much as possible. The interference did not bring much result, Feng Jin Huang destroyed these 3 ghost fires. Her refinement path killer move was already close to completion. Humph, revealing light Gu, go. Fang Yuan sneered inwardly as he flicked out a rank 4 Gu worm. At the same time, he also used a rank 5 attack which arrived in front of Feng Jin Huang first. Feng Jin Huang was already prepared, blocking the rank 5 attack, but revealing light Gu, which had neared her, suddenly self-detonated. The explosion was not intense, but the radiance was extremely dazzling. How? How does he know the weakness of ink transformation? Under Feng Jin Huang's incredulous gaze, the killer move, ink transformation, was interrupted and forcefully stopped. The killer move did not successfully activate, the severe backlash from it immediately caused Feng Jin Huang's organs to be damaged, causing large amounts of blood to flow out of her body. Her body trembled from the intense pain, and she was no longer able to maintain her control over the lumps of fire. The whole Gu refinement failed, and bursts of enormous backlash assaulted her. Feng Jin Huang spat out fresh blood as she opened her mouth widely, before falling down to the ground shortly, losing consciousness. Chaos erupted outside the stage. Spirit Affinity House's disciples wanted to go up the stage, but were blocked by the Gu formation. Don't make disturbances, all violators will be punished. The hosting elder shouted. After stabilizing the situation, he gazed towards Fang Yuan. For a moment, almost everyone outside the stage looked towards Fang Yuan. Feng Jin Huang was already unconscious, even if she woke up and tried to refine the Gu again, the materials were far from enough. Right now, Fang Yuan could not lose, as long as he slowly refined 5 orifices fire pagoda Gu, he would be the victor. However, right when Fang Yuan was about to succeed, the incomplete form of the Gu worm in his hand suddenly detonated. Fang Yuan was startled, this? Chapter 857, Fang Zheng's death. Fang Yuan and Feng Jin Huang's duel attracted the attentions of countless people, but the result was one that nobody anticipated. The process of the duel was very splendid, it was full of ups and downs. Eventually, even though Fang Yuan had absolute advantage, he met with the failure rate of a rank 5 Gu refinement, and his efforts went down the drain. He did not have enough Gu refinement materials for a second attempt, while Feng Jin Huang already had fainted and also did not have enough materials. Thus, this duel ended in a draw. Feng Jin Huang was sent for treatment immediately after the duel ended. After learning about the results, Feng Jin Huang looked at Fang Yuan with deep meaning. Since it was a draw, according to the duel rules, both parties had two options. One was to take back their wagers, the other was to trade the wagers that they had put in. As Fang Yuan had expected, Feng Jin Huang chose the second option. Fang Yuan thought about it for a moment before agreeing. Feng Jin Huang first passed one information path Gu worm over to Fang Yuan personally. The method of an immortal zombie reviving was recorded inside the Gu. After that, both parties created an agreement, in the capacity of a subsidiary force of Immortal Crane Sect, the owner of who Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan, agreed to undergo Guts Gu transactions with Spirit Affinity House. In the future, Fang Yuan would give priority to Spirit Affinity House when selling Guts Gu, even Immortal Crane Sect was behind them in the priority list. Lord Fang Yuan, our sect's Lord He Feng Yang would like to speak with you. After the duel ended, an Immortal Crane Sect elder came to Fang Yuan, he spoke in a humble manner. Oh! Fang Yuan said with surprise, lead the way. On a mountain peak with no one else around, he met He Feng Yang again. He Feng Yang still had the appearance of a youth, he wore a white robe with a black belt, the winds were blowing his sleeves as they fluttered in the air, his green eyebrows extended to his waist as they swayed with the wind as well. Your favorite. Uvels at n/vl/bin.com. It was not easy to get a draw in this duel, was it? He Feng Yang's gaze was profound, he looked at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan smiled, it can't be helped, I encountered the natural rate of failure, there was nothing I could do. His words carried no flaws. He Feng Yang sized up Fang Yuan as he said in a serious tone, it is a pity that you became a zombie despite such talent in refinement path. Actually, if you want to find a way to revive, you do not need to approach others. Immortal Crane Sect has an excellent method that can ensure that you will get rid of your zombie status. Fang Yuan heard this and felt a bit strange, why did he feel like He Feng Yang was showing an intention of recruiting him? But thinking about it, even if Fang Yuan and Immortal Crane Sect had been on opposing sides, or he had a mysterious background, or some other reasons, ignoring all these, just Fang Yuan's current display of his Gu refinement attainment was enough to move Immortal Crane Sect. Fang Yuan naturally knew the excellent method that He Feng Yang was talking about. What else could it be? It was obviously the possession technique. He Feng Yang would not be able to guess that Fang Yuan had already made preparations in this aspect. If I would lose my freedom, I would rather remain as a zombie. Fang Yuan said. He Feng Yang shook his head, I invited you here not to discuss the matter of freedom. Let's talk about important matters, you captured your brother, you have to hand him over, otherwise, the consequences are not something you can endure. Oh. Is this a threat? Fang Yuan's tone became deeper. Fang Zheng was a secondary option to regain life, even if he did not need him for this, Fang Zheng was still the best choice to create a blood deity. How could Fang Yuan hand him over? He Feng Yang nodded, you can think of this as a threat, but I would rather explain it as a warning. I'll speak the truth, eliminating Fang Zheng is Heavenly Court's orders. You might not know the extent of Heavenly Court's authority, but you just need to know one thing, there is no force in Central Continent that can defy Heavenly Court. How could Fang Yuan not know the power of Heavenly Court? He had his previous life's memories, he was even more aware of Heavenly Court's strength and power than he Feng Yang. Of course I know about Heavenly Court. But why would they have any interest in Fang Zheng? They are actually so serious about eliminating a mortal. Isn't your excuse too unrealistic? He Feng Yang, how can you convince me? Fang Yuan spread his arms out. He Feng Yang sighed, I do not need to convince you. As long as you keep Fang Zheng's life, in the end, Hu immortal blessed land will be taken down and absorbed by Heavenly Court. That is not something Immortal Crane's sect wants to see. You can consider this freely, but there is little time. If you can accept it, 3 days from now, give Fang Zheng to me. Fang Yuan frowned deeply, this unexpected news caught him off guard, he did not know about the matter involving Fate Gu, it was hard for him to link Heavenly Court and Fang Zheng together. He placed his gaze on He Feng Yang's face, he tried to find a flaw from his expression, do you take me for a fool? Handing Fang Zheng to you is like placing the key to Hu immortal blessed land into your hands. He. He Feng Yang raised his head and laughed, Fang Yuan, despite being an immortal zombie, you are truly scheming. No need to test me, the truth is, you have already started believing me. I am actually more curious than you about this. But we should curb our own curiosity regarding matters relating to Heavenly Court. 3 days later, I will execute Fang Zheng in front of you, but in exchange, you have to bring me Lord Sky Crane's soul intact. You should know that he is one of my subordinates, and is a rather capable one. Fang Yuan became silent. He Feng Yang did not stay, a light flashed and he vanished on the spot. Since He Feng Yang left, Fang Yuan had no reason to stay, he decided to use fixed immortal travel to return to Hu immortal blessed land. He had temporarily set aside the matter regarding Fang Zheng. Fang Yuan's first priority now was to research the method that Feng Jin Huang gave him. Fairy Lian Xiang. What was unexpected to Fang Yuan was that this method to revive was connected to a fairy of spirit affinity house from a previous generation. Fairy Lian Xiang was a past generation fairy of spirit affinity house, her status was similar to Mo Yao. According to Feng Jin Huang, when Fairy Lian Xiang was rank 5, she was ambushed by an enemy and became a zombie. But she had one of the 10 extreme physiques, the desolate ancient moon physique. Through a fortunate opportunity, she succeeded in her immortal ascension. Her zombie body was purified by the heavenly tribulation and earthly calamity, it was as though she was reborn. The last bit of content was deduced by many of Spirit Affinity House's Gu immortals, to get rid of the zombie body, a way to revive was to undergo immortal ascension as one of the 10 extreme physiques. Immortal ascension of the 10 extreme physiques. Fang Yuan was a little disappointed. This method was not impossible to him. He had Blood Skull Gu, he could raise a Gu master's aptitude. First Gen Gu Yu was an example which Fang Yuan could learn from. But Blood Skull Gu was only a mortal Gu, even if Fang Yuan had many descendants and killed them, it could not raise the aptitude of an immortal zombie like Fang Yuan. However, if I can advance Blood Skull Gu to an immortal Gu, it will work on me. I can use Blood Skull Immortal Gu to elevate my first aperture into the desolate ancient moon aperture, if I undergo immortal ascension after that, I would likely revive. But to raise Blood Skull Gu into an immortal Gu, I would need Blood Skull Gu's immortal Gu recipe, it would expend a lot of time and effort to attempt this. Even if I can raise my aptitude to the level of the 10 extreme physiques, the tribulation would likely be extremely dangerous. According to Feng Jin Huang's information, when Fairy Lian Xiang underwent immortal ascension, it was a terrifying event. It was almost equivalent to the grand tribulation of a rank 7 Gu immortal. Most likely, the immortal ascension of a zombie was too heaven-defying, it attracted the rage of heaven. Back then, if not for the help of several Gu immortals from Spirit Affinity House, Fairy Xiang would have been reduced to ashes by the Grand Tribulation. The immortal ascension of one of the 10 extreme physiques was already very terrifying. Fang Yuan had witnessed He Lu Lan's ascension, she even lost an immortal Gu due to it. After a person of the 10 extreme physiques becomes a zombie, and attempts to become an immortal, the tribulation would be even fiercer, its intensity would rise by over a dozen times. Fang Yuan concluded that this method not only required huge amounts of preparation, it would also expend a lot of time and energy, as well as carry great risks. Without help from others, with Fang Yuan's strength, even if he included the assistance of Tai Bai Yun Sheng, He Lu Lan, and Fairy Li Shan, it would not succeed. Weighing the costs and benefits, Fang Yuan could only place this method aside. He entered the prison cell of Dang Hun Palace. He saw Fang Zheng, who was locked inside. "Fang Yuan, what are you trying to do?" Seeing his brother, Fang Zheng screamed, his gaze filled with hatred. Fang Yuan said, "Why, are you still denying it?" Fang Zheng shouted, "Even if Immortal Crane's sect and master are responsible, you are still the biggest culprit, you are the person who slaughtered uncle and aunt. I will never forgive you, I will never let you off. Kill me, or else we will always be enemies." "Oh. My beloved brother, you are really stubborn. In that case." Fang Yuan's gaze shined, he stretched out his arm towards Fang Zheng. Soul Search. Fang Zheng's body shook, he could not move anymore, he wanted to shout, but he felt like his throat was stuck, he showed an anguished expression on his face. Fang Yuan searched Fang Zheng's soul multiple times, but he did not find anything of value. Fang Zheng is such an ordinary Gu master, why is Heavenly Court sending orders to eliminate him specifically? Fang Yuan fell into deep thought. Even though there was no evidence, he felt inclined to believe that Feng Yang was speaking the truth. Fang Yuan did not know that Heavenly Court had Fate Immortal Gu. Even though he had his previous life's memories, he was restricted by his status, he could not know everything. Especially when the strongest organization in the 5 regions, Heavenly Court, was involved. Did someone do something to Fang Zheng's soul? Fang Yuan shook his head immediately after. That was very unlikely, but he could not deny the slim possibility of it. Should I hand over Fang Zheng or not? This was the question. Fang Yuan was not afraid of Feng Yang, but he was wary of Immortal Crane's sect, and was worried about Heavenly Court. If any of the rank 8 Gu immortals in Heavenly Court attacked, killing him would be as easy as killing an ant. Of course, that was if they battled. Fang Yuan was not so foolish to get into one, he could escape and run away beforehand. Fixed immortal travel was an excellent method to do so. 3 days later, Fang Yuan handed over Fang Zheng in the spirit incubating flea, within it was Lord Sky Crane's soul. Fang Zheng had evidently been tortured, he went through lots of terrifying punishment, not only was his skin torn and flesh exposed, he even had many deep wounds that revealed his bones. In fact, one of his arms was cut off and replaced with a dog's limb. Even so, Fang Zheng could feel the dog limb and even manipulate it to move. Such cruel treatment could make someone collapse mentally. But Feng Yang only took a glance without saying anything, he said to Fang Yuan, "You made a wise choice. Now, hold up your end of the agreement." Fang Yuan's gaze was shining. "Watch closely." Feng Yang struck, under Fang Yuan's supervision, he killed Fang Zheng on the spot, fire burned until not a single trace of him was left. "Lord Feng Yang, why? You promised me." Lord Sky Crane's voice came from the spirit incubating flea. "This is an order from Heavenly Court. Immortal Crane's sect needs Fang Zheng's sacrifice. Sky Crane, this is your destiny. You wanted to possess Fang Zheng at first, but you relented and were willing to accompany him and teach him how to cultivate. Now, he is dead, not a trace of his soul is left. As compensation for going back on my words, I will find a good body for you to revive. He Feng Yang said slowly. Lord. Lord Sky Crane's crying voice could be heard. He Feng Yang waved his sleeves, he sucked the spirit incubating flea into his sleeve, as he took a look at Feng Yuan before leaving. When you are free, you can come to Fei He Mountain and have a look. Chapter 858, Second Place. Right now, I can confirm that He Feng Yang is expressing goodwill to me. Feng Yuan had a realization. He Feng Yang invited Feng Yuan personally to take a look at Fei He Mountain. What was Fei He Mountain? It was the base of Immortal Crane sect. Even though it was somewhat symbolic, the meaning he was trying to express was clear. After returning to Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Feng Yuan thought about He Feng Yang's change in attitude and smiled silently. The duel with Feng Jin Huang allowed Feng Yuan and Spirit Affinity House to establish contact for trade. The transactions of Daoist Gu with Spirit Affinity House were higher in priority than Immortal Crane sect. But because it took advantage of the setup of Central Continent's Refinement Path Convention, everyone bore witness to it. Immortal Crane sect could not make up any excuses or complaints to stop these important transactions. Hu Immortal Blessed Land and Spirit Affinity House had made contact. This made Immortal Crane sect feel a strong sense of threat. In history, among the 10 sects, Spirit Affinity House had the highest rate of recruiting demonic Path Gu immortals. Bo Qing and Feng Jiu Gu were examples that were etched into people's hearts. Get latest. Uval ch. Drs on n. V e lbj/n dot c/m. Not long ago, they had failed to take back Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Now that Feng Yuan was showing strong attainment in refinement path, Immortal Crane sect finally decided to persuade Feng Yuan in a more gentle way. Thus, He Feng Yang's attitude towards Feng Yuan changed drastically. The matter of Feng Zheng should be real. He Feng Yang's action was a sign of goodwill to Feng Yuan. He even tried to entice Feng Yuan using the possession technique. To him, if Feng Yuan continued to keep Feng Zheng in captivity, Heavenly Court would take down Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Dang Hun Mountain would definitely be taken by them in that case if Feng Yuan did not destroy it in advance. Hu Immortal Blessed Land could not be moved, and Heavenly Court was not interested in it anyway. One of the 10 great ancient sects might get to inherit it. But it would depend on internal competition between the sects under Heavenly Court to determine which one obtained it. Evidently, the Gu immortals from Immortal Crane's sect that were in Heavenly Court were weaker in power compared to the others. It was unlikely that they could take back Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Even if they took it back, without Dang Hun Mountain, Hu Immortal Blessed Land's value would be greatly diminished. No matter how they looked at it, this went against He Feng Yang and Immortal Crane sect's benefits. Thus, He Feng Yang informed Feng Yuan of this matter. It was a way to defend his own benefits. Right now, I am a subsidiary force of Immortal Crane's sect on paper, but I am actually placing myself between Spirit Affinity House and Immortal Crane sect. This has allowed my external pressure to reduce by more than half. Feng Yuan heaved a sigh to himself. In truth, Feng Yuan had been planning for such a situation. He ignored Feng Jin Huang's challenge earlier, but he later sent a message and agreed to the duel. Why was that? It was because he wanted to make use of Spirit Affinity House to resist the pressure from Immortal Crane sect. Feng Yuan had achieved his intended outcome, but the crucial factor was not him. It was the allure of Daoist Gu itself. Feng Yuan seized Hu Immortal Blessed Land. It greatly incited Feng Jin Huang and caused her to find out Dream Wing's Immortal Gu's true ability in advance. Because Feng Jin Huang used Dream Wings, she obtained many benefits and placed greater importance on Daoist Gu. If not for that, why would Spirit Affinity House allow Fang Yuan to make use of them? They were not fools. Indeed, Fang Yuan purposely made the duel a draw. He wanted to show an agreeable attitude to Spirit Affinity House. To Fang Yuan, this duel changed his circumstances in Central Continent. It greatly reduced his pressure and gave him more time and energy to make bigger plans. Of course, once the secret that Fang Yuan was the culprit of 88 Truyang Building's collapse gets exposed, Central Continent would definitely be stirred up. Fang Yuan would be wanted by everyone. He would need to escape for his life. From Feng Jinhuang's perspective, even though she was injured and did not win in the duel, she was the biggest winner. With Daoist Gu's help from now on, she would be able to use Dream Wing's Immortal Gu and improve drastically. Her speed would surpass practically all Gu immortals. She would grow rapidly. In my previous life, I killed Feng Jinhuang, but now, it seems that I am aiding her. Towards this, Fang Yuan felt deeply moved, but there was no point expressing this to others. Fang Yuan, the matter has been settled. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. Tai Bai Yunxing came to say his goodbyes. These last days, he had been moving around northern plains, finding a suitable location to place his blessed land. He had found a location already, and was about to place it down, but at the crucial moment, Fang Yuan asked him to return. Thank you for your help just now. You chose a good location. Go ahead and blend your heaven and earth chi. When the calamity comes, I will lend you a hand. Fang Yuan said to Tai Bai Yunxing. Tai Bai Yunxing nodded. He went to northern plains using a stargate. After obtaining star form blessed land, Fang Yuan received a huge stock of starlight firefly Gu. He no longer had to save up on the number of times stargates were used. Fang Yuan came to the prison cell and saw Guyu Fangjing again. Wasn't Guyu Fangjing killed by He Feng Yang already? Why was he alive here? As it turns out, this was just a show by Fang Yuan. He purposely cut off an arm from Guyu Fangjing, fitting a dog limb onto it. He was trying to create a false appearance of abuse and humiliation. In truth, he kept the severed limb here. When He Feng Yang killed Fangjing, Fang Yuan asked Tai Bai Yunxing to use man as before Immortal Gu, expending a considerable amount of immortal essence on the severed arm, reviving Fangjing. He Feng Yang did not suspect anything. He had limited knowledge. He did not know that an immortal Gu like man as before existed. From his perspective, Fangjing's body and soul were destroyed in front of him, thus Fangjing was definitely dead. Any other Gu immortal would think the same. This was common sense. But the world was huge. There were bound to be rare and strange immortal Gu, or immortal killer moves, like man as before. Nobody could know them all, because humans had limited knowledge. Even immortals were no exception. Omnipotence and omniscience, even rank 9 Gu immortals or Ren Zhu could not achieve that. To reach that stage, maybe only one grand existence could achieve it, that was the world. Fang Yuan tossed an information path Gu worm to Fangjing. He showed a mocking expression as he said, "Take a good look, this is the immortal crane sect that you are so grateful towards, and that kind-hearted master of yours. If it were not for me, you would be dead already." Impossible. I won't believe your lies. Fangjing screamed, but he still held this information path Gu worm in his hands. In this Gu worm, the video of He Feng Yang killing Fangjing as well as his conversation with Lord Sky Crane's soul were recorded. After looking at it, Fangjing broke the information path Gu worm into pieces. He fell into immeasurable rage. He raised his head and screamed, his expression contorted as he pointed at Fang Yuan, shouting, "Impossible. This is all fake, you made this up. I will not believe it, I will never believe it. You lied to me, you are lying. Unless I see it for myself, hear it for myself, and get Master's reply. You will witness it all. But, now is not the time yet." Fang Yuan turned around, leaving the room. He shut the cell as the room went into complete darkness. Fang Zheng was still screaming in the darkness. He ran around in the tiny room and punched and kicked the walls, venting his emotions. After settling the matter regarding Fang Zheng, Fang Yuan progressed smoothly in the refinement path convention without any problems. Since he eliminated some of the truly skilled Gu refinement experts early, it made the later rounds much easier for him. Eventually, Feng Jin Huang got 6th place, while Fang Yuan reached the finals. He faced the strongest competitor in this competition, Yimu Chun. In this battle, Fang Yuan lost completely. Even though the task was still the same as his previous life, and Fang Yuan had a huge advantage of knowing it in advance. But his opponent, Yimu Chun, was a true refinement path quasi-great grandmaster. This level was terrifying. Even though Feng Jin Huang had Dream Wings Immortal Gu, she could not reach this stage easily. The higher the level of attainment went in each path, the more difficulty one would face in trying to raise it. In history, only the 3 olds of refinement path could reach the highest point. Right now in Northern Plains, there were only 4 people who were publicly known to match or surpass him. They were the 4 refinement path experts of Northern Plains. Fang Yuan knew deeply, even if he had the advantage of knowing the task, he could not defeat Yimu Chun. This was the difference in level. Speaking of which, Yimu Chun wore nearly the same thing as Fang Yuan. He wore a black robe that covered his entire body, as well as a mask on his face. In Fang Yuan's previous life, he got 1st place. There were no surprises, his ability was truly unfathomable. Fang Yuan forfeited without competing. Many people were unhappy and blamed him. After all, refinement path attainment level was hard to assess. Even though Yimu Chun was very strong, Fang Yuan was also an extremely favored contestant. Forfeiting without a fight, the spectators who were looking forward to the final round felt unhappy. They were complaining and claiming that Fang Yuan's forfeiture was rigged. But no matter what, Fang Yuan, who reached 2nd place, obtained his original goal. He obtained a success Dao mark. After that, the representatives from Immortal Crane sect and the other 9 great ancient sects came to Fang Yuan, attempting to buy his Dao mark. This success Dao mark could not be traded or given away. Even though Heavenly Court tried many times, they had never succeeded. The 10 great ancient sects naturally did not have any intention to seize it, they only tried to make a deal with him. After all, with Fang Yuan's incredible Gu refinement techniques, an over-evaluation on everyone's part, asking him to refine a rank 6 immortal Gu would use up this success Dao mark, in exchange for no failure rate. No matter how high of a price the 10 sects of Central Continent offered, Fang Yuan rejected them all. Returning to Hu Immortal Blessed Land, he started preparing for the refinement of change form immortal Gu. Ever since Fang Yuan started the plan of refining change form immortal Gu, he had been gathering the materials for it. Because he had the success Dao mark, he only needed 1 set of Gu refinement materials. This greatly reduced the cost that he had to bear. Even so, after Fang Yuan collected all of the ingredients, he had already sold or traded most of the immortal materials that he had obtained from the Northern Plains auction. If not for the refinement path convention filling up the gap in materials, he would still be lacking in some of them. The difficulty of refining an immortal Gu could be easily seen. Fang Yuan only had to prepare 1 set of materials, but it expended almost all of his current accumulated resources. If not for the Guts Gu trade and success Dao mark, Fang Yuan would not take a risk and undergo such a gamble. Chapter 859, Refining Immortal Gu. Central Continent, Truyang Mountain Range. The setting sun was like blood, shining down on the uneven mountain range. On a dangerous mountain peak here, a hairy man was climbing enthusiastically. "Master, master! Wait for me!" The hairy man climbed as he shouted. Unlike most other hairy men, this hairy man had a different sort of intelligence in his eyes. he spoke just like ordinary humans. He was chasing after Yumu Chun along the mountain range. During the Central Continent Refinement Path Convention, this young hairy man had been taking notice of Yumu Chun. When the Central Continent Refinement Path Convention ended, Yumu Chun got first place and the hairy man had been following after him, all along to this place. This hairy man was strong and muscular, but he could not catch up to Yumu Chun. Yumu Chun had entered Truyang Mountain Range after the convention ended. The hairy man followed behind him, shouting and chasing. Along the way, he suffered a lot and was covered in dust and injuries. "Master, wait for me." The hairy man climbed onto the mountain peak, but he stared blankly. How can this be? Master was still at the mountain peak earlier, how could he be at the base of the mountain so quickly? What goo worm did he use? Seeing that the distance he had desperately shrunken had extended, the hairy man was anxious. He quickly went down the mountain, but he missed a step and lost his footing, rolling down the mountain slope. Thankfully, there were thick branches that broke his fall. Vischten. Velben. C. M for new updates. Even so, he was crying and screaming as he rolled down until partway down the mountain. His body was bleeding and he suffered fractures everywhere. The pain in his body was far less than the pain in his heart. If I miss this opportunity, it will be hard to find Master again. The hairy man was crying. He struggled to get up, but he could not. He raised his head in desperation. "Master, please take pity on this junior and come back." Boo hoo hoo. His voice was very weak. After his soft pleas, he started sobbing profusely. But when his tears flowed out, his body shook. He saw that out of nowhere, a pair of legs were in front of him. He looked up along the legs, joyfully seeing that Yumu Chun had turned back and was standing in front of him, observing him. The hairy man quickly knelt down. "Master, Master, you finally meet me." Yumu Chun sighed. His voice was deep and grave as he said, "Ben Duo E. Years ago, I only gave you a few pointers casually. You and I are not fated to be master and disciple." The hairy man, Ben Duo E, heard this and cried out. He gathered strength from nowhere and jumped, hugging Yumu Chun's leg. "Master, oh Master. Even if you are unwilling to admit you are my master, but from your instructions, I was enlightened, escaping from ignorance, I broke through my limits and my refinement attainment reached an unforeseen level. Even though you only said a few words, this gratitude is deeper than the sea. You changed my fate, thus in my heart, you are forever my master." Yumu Chun stretched out his arm. He rubbed the hairy man named Ben Duoyi's head. He, back then, I only gave you pointers because I saw that you were wiser than normal hairy men, you had greater cognitive abilities. But it is for your sake that I am not making you my disciple. I am a person who has escaped from fate, being associated with me will only bring you harm. From now on, you are not allowed to tell others that I had once given you pointers, otherwise, you will definitely die a terrible death. Remember this, you have to remember this. Disciple understands. Ben Duo E nodded his head quickly. Yumu Chun snorted, eh. Ben Duo E quickly changed his words. I remember it, I remember it. Master Yumu Chun, please take me in. I am not qualified to be your disciple, but I can be your follower or slave. I am very diligent and witty, you praised me before. I will be very loyal, and serve you with all my heart. Yumu Chun shook his head and smiled bitterly. Oh you. Forget it, you have traveled through 30 mountains and encountered much hardship in pursuing me. It is very rare to see such determination and perseverance. Ben Duo E, remember this, your most outstanding merit is that you have unique intelligence. Man is the spirit of all beings, but even as a hairy man, your intelligence is not inferior to humans. But you cannot rely on this excessively. After all, a swimmer can always drown if he is careless. You must remember your own sincerity in perseverance. Get up. Master, if you do not agree, I will not get up. Ben Duo-yi shouted, "Ah!" Suddenly, his arms grabbed air, even though they were holding onto Yumu Chun's legs earlier. A formless force was repelling him. He could only watch as Yumu Chun floated into the air, moving up towards the sky. Ben Duo-yi, our relationship, formed by fortuitous chance, ends here. Today is the last day we will ever meet. Now, I will give you your final lesson. It is a parting gift. Watch closely. In the air, Yumu Chun's voice could be heard. Ben Duo-yi looked up quickly. He watched with anticipation. Central continent, Earth abyss, inside star form blessed land. The night sky was gentle, a cool wind was blowing. Fang Yuan looked at the stars in the sky of the blessed land. They were giving off dim starlight. It was complete silence. Fang Yuan looked down slowly, retracting his gaze from the vast sky, onto the huge turtle shell in front of him. This was not an ordinary turtle shell, it was the shell of a desolate beast turtle. At this moment, the shell was upside down, like a bowl, with the shell being full of poisonous blood. The poisonous blood was collected from who immortal blessed land's earthly calamity. Now, in order to refine change form immortal Gu, they could be used. I can finally start refining change form immortal Gu. Fang Yuan let out a breath of foggy air. The matter of refining change form immortal Gu was top secret. Fang Yuan did not tell a single person. Even Tai Bai Yunsheng, He Lu Lan, and Fairy Li Shan were kept in the dark. They had no idea. As for star form blessed land, it had been closed long ago, because the blessed land was inside Earth abyss. During this time period, nobody came here. It was a safe place. Safety was very important. Refining immortal Gu was not easy to begin with. It could be said to be filled with difficulties. There were too many external influences that could affect the immortal Gu refinement process. If he made even a single mistake, the extremely valuable immortal materials would be wasted, along with all his hard work. Thus, he needed a quiet and safe environment to refine immortal Gu. Even though Fang Yuan had a success Dao mark and could reduce the natural rate of failure when refining a rank 6 immortal Gu to 0. What if during the process of refinement, Fang Yuan made a technical error? It was incredibly important to find an environment like star form blessed land which could be relied upon to be undisturbed. Otherwise, if Fang Yuan failed the refinement, he would have no one else to blame but himself. Even though he was going to start, Fang Yuan still took half a day to condition his mind and body before starting. When he felt his soul was replenished and at its peak condition, unable to become any better, he finally started. His eyes shined with a brilliant light, countless ghost fires burned under the turtle shell. At once, the surroundings burned with eerie fire, the temperature of an enormous area around him fell rapidly. Inside the turtle shell, the poisonous blood had no reactions. Central continent, Truyang Mountain Range. Ben Duo-yi was just raising his head to look, but he got stunned. At this moment, his eyes widened to a ridiculous size. He had thought that Yumu Chun's final lesson was to impart him some unique Gu refinement techniques or some strong refinement path killer moves. But he did not think that Yumu Chun would stand in the air, waving his hand as he scattered some dazzling specks of light. These specks of light were pure and bright. Ben Duo-yi's eyes were tearing up. Just as he felt dizzy, he heard Yumu Chun's words, "Ben Duo-yi, this is the final lesson, open your eyes and watch, learn as much as you can. Alright, I am going to refine an immortal Gu now." Immortal Gu. Ben Duo-yi's heart shuddered, he opened his mouth, his jaws were opened so wide they almost dislocated. Refine immortal Gu. He stammered, he could not understand what was going on, he was uncertain. Why was Master Yumu Chun taking such a huge risk? Even though Ben Duo-yi was not a Gu refinement expert, he knew that it was hard to refine immortal Gu. Before refining the immortal Gu, one needed to condition their body and mind, to get themselves into peak condition, while clearing their mind and being extremely aware of the Gu refinement procedures. But Yu Mu Chun did not do that. After the refinement path convention ended, he entered Truyang mountain range, moving along the area and did not rest once. And he was refining Gu in this place. Truyang mountain range was a very dangerous place. The environment that you refined Gu in was very important, even a 3-year-old knew that. Right now, Ben Duo Yi was very worried. If they attracted desolate beasts during the Gu refinement, or even ancient desolate beasts, what would they do? And this was not the most troublesome part. In comparison to desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts, Gu immortals were the biggest threats. Because of Song Zixing, Truyang mountain range had many Gu immortals now. They were searching and trying to locate Song Zixing. On one hand, they could beat him while he was down, while also completing the secret missions of their respective sects for great rewards. Yu Mu Chun did not pay attention to Ben Duoyi's thoughts, how worried or nervous he was. He had a composed and grand attitude, he moved his hands gracefully. At once, light shone up to a few hundred meters in height, clouds were gathering and forming layers in the sky. Winds blew, the grass on the mountain swayed, beautiful flowers gave off the fragrant sense of nature. Central continent, star-form blessed land. An hour passed. In the huge turtle shell, the poisonous blood was boiling, it gave off bubbling noises. In the sky above the poisonous blood, a huge wave of poisonous gas was moving around, forming a thick and black poisonous fog. As Fang Yuan increased the heat, the poisonous fog started to spread, it corroded the surrounding grass and flowers, causing them to die. Fang Yuan did not care about this. He had prepared meticulously, there were layers of Gu formations in the surroundings, the poisonous gas could not spread far, they were limited to this area. 1,000-year bitter shell. Fang Yuan looked at the boiling poisonous blood as he stretched out a monstrous arm in request. Here, master. At the next moment, star-form land spirit appeared with the 1,000-year bitter shell, handing it to Fang Yuan. In order to refine change-form immortal Gu, star-form land spirit had turned into free labor for Fang Yuan. During the entire process, he was Fang Yuan's assistant. Chapter 860, Nature Gu Refinement Technique. Bitter shells lived in deep waters. Taking in the sand and rocks in the water, they could melt the sediments and turn them into bitter water. If someone opened the shell and obtained this bitter water, using it to brew wine, they would get bitter shell wine. Its taste is very unique, bitter and fragrant. Fang Yuan had once obtained a bitter shell, he opened it and used the bitter water to create bitter wine, before using that to refine the liquor worm. Bitter shells were quite rare already, but 1,000-year bitter shells were even rarer, it was a good material to refine immortal Gu. Fang Yuan's bitter shell was a 1,000-year bitter shell, it was black and had circular loops of white markings, like tree rings. The alternating black and white color was very eye-catching. Fang Yuan looked at the fire below the turtle shell, as for the 1,000-year bitter shell in his hand, he threw it in without looking. Refining immortal Gu was very important, all of the immortal materials had to be checked. Fang Yuan had already checked them many times, the ingredients had no problems. Thus, when Fang Yuan was refining Gu, he did not need to distract himself and inspect the immortal materials, he only needed to check the flame's intensity. After tossing in the 1,000-year bitter shell, the poisonous blood no longer boiled, but the poisonous gas was still rumbling, like there was a black python coiling around inside. An intense, foul odor was created. Fang Yuan did not move, he was engulfed in the foul odor, sniffing it attentively. Although he was an immortal zombie and did not have any sense of smell, he had investigative killer moves to help him smell things. This odor was hard to describe, it was absolutely disgusting. Fang Yuan wanted to vomit, his head was dizzy from smelling it. But Fang Yuan had to persevere, because this odor was one of the signs of whether the Gu refinement was successful, whether the 1,000-year bitter shell melted perfectly into it. Soon, the 1,000-year bitter shell that Fang Yuan tossed in completely melted, the black poisonous fog stopped rumbling, while the poisonous blood boiled again. Fang Yuan tossed in a second, then a third 1,000-year bitter shell one by one. After a total of 12 bitter shells were melted, the poisonous fog was extremely thick, the intense foul odor started to smell fragrant. Fang Yuan's expression became more serious and stern. Twin Ice Heart. A hairy man, Ben Duo-yi, shouted. Even though he was only a rank 5 Gu master, he had an extraordinary refinement path attainment level. Thus, he had broad vision and could recognize the immortal material that Yu Mu Chun took out. Ben Duo-yi had an expression of shock. A thumb-sized ice heart was already an immortal material, but the ice heart that Yu Mu Chun took out was as large as a basin. Not only was it big, the crucial thing was that this ice heart had a special appearance, within it were two conjoined pieces of heart-shaped ice. This was a twin ice heart, it was 100 times rarer than ordinary ice hearts. Ordinary ice hearts were rank 6 immortal materials, they could create rank 6 immortal Gu. Meanwhile, twin ice hearts were immortal materials that could refine rank 7 immortal Gu. Such a valuable immortal material, he actually took it out first. Evidently, the twin ice heart is not the main material for this Gu, it is only a supplementary material. Master is really amazing, I have no idea what Gu he is trying to refine. Ben Duo-yi had a look of admiration and adoration. At the same time, he finally relaxed. Such a precious material was used, it seemed that Master Yu Mu Chun was prepared, he was not casually refining this Gu. But Ben Duo-yi thought, Yu Mu Chun was here in the middle of nowhere refining a precious immortal Gu in the open. Was this because Yu Mu Chun was stupid? Or was he extremely daring and fearless from his skill? Ben Duo-yi could not come to a conclusion. The surrounding winds were getting stronger, soon, the winds gathered into a tornado. The tornadoes were separated by a certain distance, they did not crash into one another, it resembled a scene of a forest of tornadoes. Yu Mu Chun floated in the air, in between the tornado forest, the winds were wild, as his bronze mask was blown away, revealing an aged face which was full of hair. Yu Mu Chun laughed loudly, his body shook as the black robe on him tore, the pieces of fabric flew away, showing Yu Mu Chun's muscular body, his entire body was covered in brown hair. It turned out that his real identity was like that of Ben Duo-yi, he was a hairy man. No wonder he gave Ben Duo-yi pointers. Hairy men were variant humans, they were different from humans. More specifically, they were two different races. Not even Fang Yuan knew about Yu Mu Chun's true identity. As if he understood Ben Duo-yi's worries, Yu Mu Chun, while paying close attention to his work, said, "You fool! Why do we hairy men have talent for Gu refinement? It is because hairy men are born with refinement path Dao marks on our bodies. In fact, refinement path originated from hairy men. In terms of the history of Gu refinement, we have been doing it for eons, our accumulated foundations dozens of times deeper than that of humans. But humans have achieved superiority, they wiped out many hairy men, causing countless pieces of precious refinement path knowledge to be lost. Right now, the Gu refinement techniques of humans are influencing hairy men, this is a huge error." Yu Mu Chun continued, for example, when humans refine Gu, they need a quiet environment that is isolated from the outside world. This allows them to refine Gu safely, they have a higher chance of succeeding. But this is only focusing on short-term gains, they are not planning ahead for the future. Gu masters nurture, use, and refine. Nurturing Gu is being familiar with materials and their connection to Gu worms, why do we feed certain kinds of food to a particular Gu worm? Looking at the Gu worm and its food, countless Gu recipes can be discovered. Using Gu is using and understanding the Tao marks on the Gu worm. Refining Gu is even more crucial, it is the handling of Tao marks. When refining Gu, one should be surrounded by nature. Because the world itself has an endless number of Tao marks. It is like a baby in a mother's womb, the world itself is the best place to refine Gu. If we can make use of the Tao marks of the world, in a way, the world itself is helping us refine Gu. Borrowing the power of the world to refine Gu. Ben Duo-e stared with wide-opened eyes, he was tongue-tied. Yumu Chun's words were shocking, this was the first time Ben Duo-e had heard this theory, it was a huge inspiration and expanded his vision. Yumu Chun laughed heartily, his eyes shined with brilliance. Ben Duo-e, you have learned the Gu refinement techniques of humans, even though they are effective, you have taken the wrong path. Learning from others can improve oneself, but the ways of humans is not suited for us. If you want to improve further and become a refinement path great grandmaster, you will need to go back to your origins, and use the Gu refinement methods of us hairy men. I am willing. I am willing. Master Yumu Chun, please be magnanimous and teach me the Gu refinement techniques of us hairy men. Ben Duo-e shouted excitedly, he kowtowed non-stop. Yumu Chun laughed heartily, don't be eager to make a decision, there is a huge risk in this, you might not improve, it could potentially harm you instead. I started feeding Gu worms at 3 years old, I touched and was in close contact with Gu worms at 10 years old, without any instructors, I knew what food foreign Gu worms needed to eat, and how to feed them. At 16, I used human Gu refinement techniques to refine rank 5 Gu with a 90% success rate. But this was a wrong path. When I was 22, I realized this point, I decided to start all over again, refining Gu in nature. When I was 138 years old, my nature Gu refinement techniques had finally reached a state of minor success. Now that I am 246 years old, my nature Gu refinement techniques has reached great success. I can comprehend nature and learn about astrology in earth veins, I can choose the most suitable area, making use of hidden Tao marks in heaven and earth to assist me in my Gu refinement. Right now, I have a 40% success rate in refining rank 6 Immortal Gu, and a 5% success rate in refining rank 7 Immortal Gu. As for rank 8 Immortal Gu, limited by my cultivation level, I have not tried them yet. Such words shook Ben Duo-e. Yumu Chun's success rate in refining Gu was too high. Ordinarily, the success rate of refining rank 6 Immortal Gu was less than 1%. For rank 7, the success rate was 0.1%, and for rank 8, it was 0.01%. As for Yumu Chun, he could refine rank 6 Immortal Gu with a 40% success rate. That was 4 in 10 attempts. And for rank 7 Immortal Gu, he could succeed once in every 20 attempts. Such a success rate would shock the world if it was exposed. This was the brilliance of nature Gu refinement techniques. And Ben Duo-e also realized. To learn these incredible technique, one needed ample talent and aptitude. Yumu Chun had incredible talent, he fed Gu worms at 3 years old, he was in close contact with Gu worms at 10, learning what they ate. By that age, he had already learned that Gu worms carried the traces of Tao marks, they were connected to all beings in this world. When Yumu Chun was 16, he could refine rank 5 Gu using human techniques. When he was 22, he realized this was not the way for him, and he gave up his achievements, restarting from scratch. From this point, one could see that Yumu Chun not only had talent, he also had ambition and aspiration. Furthermore, to learn nature Gu refinement techniques, one needed huge amounts of time and resources. When Yumu Chun was 138 years old, he achieved minor success. When he was 246 years old, he attained great success. Along the way, he must have spent an immense amount of wealth and time to practice, it was unthinkable. Aside from his talent, just the point about expending resources was unrealistic for Ben Duo because he was a lone cultivator. When Gu immortals cultivate, they needed resources. This was even more the case for refinement path Gu masters. Without lots of practice, without enough resources, even Gu immortals could learn nothing. Most Gu immortals were flying masters, but only a small number were refinement path masters. Fang Yuan did not have higher achievements in refinement path, he only had become a refinement path quasi-grandmaster. Other than his limited talent and that his efforts were not focused on this path, it was also because he was limited by resources. Yumu Chun saw that the tornadoes were calming down, he started to refine Gu. He stood in the air, his hair was swaying as he took out immortal materials one after another from his immortal aperture. He tossed these immortal materials into each of the tornadoes after careful selection. The tornadoes were like sharp blades, the immortal materials were grinded into powder quickly. Ben Duo was dumbfounded. Ordinarily speaking, when refining Gu, the sets of immortal materials had to be measured properly, the timing in which they were used was precise, and the heat used to handle the immortal materials had to be managed. But Yumu Chun was very casual, leaving aside the forest of tornadoes, his technique in handling the immortal materials was very crude, he did not pay attention to the quantity of each material. He was like a terrible chef, randomly tossing in oil and other condiments into the dish according to his urges. If anyone else tried this method, Ben Duo would scoff in disdain. But when Yumu Chun did it, there was an unspeakably smooth flow and natural feeling. His every moment was very ordinary, but there was an indescribable beauty, as if perfectly suited to nature, deep and profound meaning was hidden in his actions. At once, Ben Duo had frozen in place, his eyes were staring without blinking. He was completely dazed.